Welcome to Skylar Fictions. Bring a theist. I can't do a growl, so I'm not going to try. And I'm not very intimidating, so that's the best I can do. That's the best you're going to get. Sorry, Skylar. I'm not too good at sound effects. But anyways, welcome back, dude. You've been away for a while. I know you got a lot of crap going on and this and that, but whatever. You're doing okay, right?
Life is good, man. I can't complain.
Well, we wouldn't care if you did complain. We would
probably not. Like, oh, here's Skylar Fiction complaining about something again, huh?
Yeah, what's unique about that? So, okay, let's try to avoid some of the cringe because I can be very cringy. Anyways, it's Steve. I'm going to be the host tonight on the Great Big Community page with Skylar Fiction. Got Midnight. And we got any theist who wants to come in and have a conversation with Skylar. Now, most people know Skylar has been all over the board on his theological profiles from, I think, theist to deist to atheist to agnostic, back to atheist, back to deist, back to agnostic.
That's a little bit of a fucking exaggerate. It was more
something along those lines.
Agnostic, deist, agnostic.
Agnostic, deist. There we go. Okay.
I don't think, I wonder if I should be drinking now. I wonder if I should get a beer.
Most of the time when we're on the GDC channel, we are drinking. So,
it's probably not a bad idea. Maybe I'll grab one.
It never hurts. Yes. Welcome, Wolf. Wolf decided to.
Hey, welcome, Wolf. I'm going to grab a beer. I'll be right back.
Take your time. While you're doing that, let's say we get some theists who want to come in and talk to Skylar. As I had noted in the video description, the Clowncore posse have taken their toys and gone home. Ronnie has basically resorted to just living in his own little fantasy world where he has made no errors, everybody else is wrong, and everybody's scared of him. And that we are just bashing on him because he's so utterly brilliant that he just shows everybody up. And yeah, so I mean, I'm putting Ronnie officially in the batshit crazy column that I can't even talk about anymore. I think he's mental. I think he has something physically wrong. I'm going to put him in that category where I just think he's delusional. So a mental defect, I don't want to pick on him that much anymore.
I mean, Steve, even G-Man has more courage than Ronnie. At least he actually debates people.
Yeah, no, I think that when it comes down to it, watching the last video I just saw from Ronnie, he is more mentally deficient than G-Man in some ways. He lives in a fantasy world where he thinks that for some reason he has never made a mistake. He can't be corrected. Everybody else is wrong. His understanding of things is so much greater than everybody else's. He lives seriously in bizarre world. And to
Isn't
me,
that kind of G-Man, sort of a little bit?
I think G-Man's a little more touch with reality than Ronnie is, and I hate to say it.
He's dumb, but I mean, remember when he had that website up? He made up that story based on with that Nephilim free clip that he put up about like hacking his website, and he used that to take it down. I mean, like, this is the kind of guy who can't accept criticism on anything. Like
that's why I'm saying he's something physically wrong with that guy's brain.
Yep.
I'm going to place him under mental defect for a while. I just think I really feel like I'm picking up somebody who's mentally deficient, and I don't like that feeling.
He thinks this is a good way to defend his religious beliefs. So, I mean, this is his crusade method, for lack of a better term.
Well, I get that, but that's G-Man's thing too, right? But I mean, Ronnie's world of delusion is just unparalleled. He's incompetent. Yep. He's inept. He's dumb. He knows nothing about these topics. He thinks he does. He has never corrected anybody, as I keep telling people. What he has corrected people on is very minor. I wouldn't even give him a point for that. I'd give him at best half a point, and because every time he gets something somewhat right, there's more nuance to it. It's kind of one of those things that he stumbles upon being correct, right? But to say that he's just never wrong and that everybody else is just scared of him, and I just think the CCP have just gone their own way. And so, as I noted, we're looking for more intelligent theists, people like Ochiwawa, people like Kenny, people like General Han Solo.
You think the Clowncore posse's gotten boring, man? They're not. Yeah. It's not even interesting anymore. It's like it used to be kind of fun, but now it's
sad.
Especially someone like Ronnie, I can't. It's first of all, it just hurts my head to listen to him talk. But like other than that, then the substance the lack of substance is what I should say. There is the worst part.
Well, I mean, you're in the same boat that I've came to. I can't listen to him for very long. I don't watch most of his videos. I haven't talked about Ronnie in quite some time. I'm letting Dragnaut take all that. It's just something that I just don't have an interest to. Yes, Midnight, you can invite Cyborg.
Okay, thanks.
But yeah, I don't. Again, I'm not trying to be flippant about this. I think he's deficient. I think he's something mentally wrong, and I don't want to pick on somebody who has a mental defect. I like to pick on people that are willfully stupid. I mean, he is willfully stupid to some degree, but
I mean, it's not even that. Even when you take away the whole mentally deficient thing, like when it comes to his repertoire, it's not much.
It's the same stuff. Like, I mean, how many times can you debunk the whole ATP synthase crap, right?
I mean, like he's in constant repetition. It's not very engaging over time. So
you're just saying that it's nothing pretty much new with him.
Exactly.
By the way, I'm putting the link in the live chat. Come on in. I have cameraman on. I have mute on, so nobody can really do anything.
G-Man's more engaging. You know, with the talk I had with him, I mean, he kept mispronouncing spackle.
Spackle.
Yeah, he called me spackle. He got midnight right, but not spackle. That was a trip.
I think he thinks I'm racist for some reason.
He thinks you're racist. You're black. You can't be racist, if what I understand. No, I think you can be, but you're not racist.
I did make a comparison with him and Caesar from Planet of the Apes, and I had to make an apology to Caesar because
that wasn't very nice. Caesar
because Caesar had the capacity to learn from his experiences and past mistakes. I mean, he had charisma. I mean, compared to
I like Caesar.
We did get Ochiwawa on here. We're getting an atheist circle jerk in here.
That's what happens. It's hard to get theists in the room, man, these days. That's why it drives me nuts. It's hard to get them in, man.
Okay, and you are officially taking on the agnostic label, right, Skylar? I don't want to like misrepresent.
No. Yeah, that's fine. Agnostic's fine.
So you're my people. Right.
I'm one of y'all
my people. We got cookies. Come to agnosticism.
Yo, do you know anything about this guy that's going to have a conversation with me this week? What's that dude's name? I was talking with him earlier, and he said he would do let me get his name real quick. I can't remember what it is. But he asked me like 100 questions before he'd actually do the hangout with me. Rodney Mulroney.
Doesn't sound familiar.
Has like a little genie lamp. Looks like a guy taking a picture of it. Whatever. He's supposed to be coming on my channel this week, so we'll see what happens. We'll see if he shows.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know the guy you're talking about. He's relatively new to the Great Debate community. He has a background in philosophy and logic, high-end logic. He knows his stuff.
Okay, good.
He's like on Malpass's level of logic.
Oh wow, good.
Yeah. So
well, we'll see how I do. I'm not that good at the logic. So
yeah, I actually like the guy, but I got into it with him initially on another forum because he wanted a formal logic thing, and I'm like, look, I'm making an informal logical argument, just like Alex does. He's like, well, that's why I criticize Alex. He doesn't like informal logical arguments. I'm like, well, I and a few other people that talk about these things, we like I prefer the informal logic. I don't want to put everything in a logical thing that, by the way, I don't know that type of high-end logic to their degree anyways. Yeah. I can read it, like when he makes a logical proof. I can read it and figure it out and translate it into natural language, but I can't write it, right? So I'm not even going to try. But,
I don't really see the point of it either, to be honest with you. I think that it's especially too from like an audience, like someone who's watching this that isn't necessarily philosophically minded. Like they're not going to, I don't know if they'll necessarily enjoy watching that. You know, seeing the conversation.
You lose the people, right?
Yeah. You know, kind of like that math hangout you tried to do that one time.
Those are awesome.
Like, hey, yeah, shut the fuck up, you know.
Midnight. My math hangout's good.
Yes, well, to me at least, because I'm a math geek, so whatever.
All matters. I'm here to please Midnight.
Yeah.
Right. Let me correct the phrasing on that.
I'll please Midnight.
Yeah, I'm sure you would. Look at Midnight.
One pony fag to another.
Not. So one of us is going to win. It ain't going to be me.
Pony fags got to stay together.
Yeah, knock yourself out, bro. So what I've done is I've actually blocked every theist in the Great Debate community right now So when I'm calling them out, I can say that none of them want to come in here, and look how scared they are.
I hope you didn't do that for real. Otherwise, no one can come in
I
here.
blocked them all. Yeah, I mean, that's the way to do an instant win. You just block everybody and say, "Oh, look, they won't come in."
Okay, G-Man or
It's
Ronnie
called
or
making an
whoever.
echo chamber with some excellent padding.
This is
God,
gonna
I'm
sound
kidding.
crazy.
That's exactly what the Clowncore Posse has done.
Yeah, I know. I
I know this is gonna sound. I know this is gonna sound crazy, but I kind of miss messing with Darth Dawkins. He was a character.
I don't. I can't stand his voice either.
Fuck Darth Dawkins. I went into one hangout, or I went into. Where did you bring me, Phil? I talked to him once, and he was an asshole immediately.
Of course.
I was being nice to him too. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna play devil's advocate. Hi, I'm Christian. Hi, how are you?
Ochiwawa's eating, so as soon as he's eating, he might join us. I've sent this out to General Han Solo, Kenny, a few other people.
I think I've only met General Han Solo. I think is the only one I might have talked to before, a little bit.
You haven't met Ochiwawa yet?
No, I don't think so. I haven't met a lot of these new guys, man. I've been kind of hiding.
I know. That's why I'm like reintroducing you,
dude. Yeah, I mean, I want to start. I'm going to be off work for a little bit. I'm going to have some free time, so man,
I might as well get your ass kicked. Is what I want to see.
Well, you know, there's always a dream. That's
Ocean's going to take up the mantle.
Ocean. Well, the irony is probably Ocean and I agree on most.
That's probably true.
Like, I think we have the same stances on morality. I think we pretty much line up almost everything, except for the paganism. But like, or not paganism. Wicked. What is he? Is it pagan? Am I correct?
Pagan, yeah.
Yeah.
Pagan.
Polytheist.
Should I go back?
He believes in Nordic gods, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but he doesn't really believe in Nordic gods. Like, he doesn't actually believe.
I think he does.
I mean, I don't believe in them. I just sort of take Odin's advice because that's some decent advice.
I think he puts them as a real entity.
I don't. I think I asked him before. I might be wrong. But I think I asked him before. I thought it was more like a. How would you say it?
Dude, I just heard this tweet, man, from Trump. He used an ethnic slur towards the Irish.
Oh, that fucking bastard!
He called this Irish guy a potato eating.
No, he did not.
I might agree. I was that pejorative.
I almost wish he said that because he would be out as president. That would be it.
I mean, dude, it's no different in Idaho.
Oh.
All right, come on, Ocean. What do you want? A special invite or what? What's wrong here, Ocean? You call Ocean out, and then he goes running. It's kind of you're around because I know it's been a while, and a lot of you guys here probably don't know Skylar. I know MPA does. I know Wolf does, but the rest of you guys, they probably don't know Skylar. But
I've seen some of his videos. You know, the old videos that he has on his channel because they were recommended to me. I watched a few of them.
Bitch, I have technology to handle.
Yeah,
this shit.
So anyways,
goddamn. Like, I'm sitting here and Google's like, no, you can't sign in. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm already signed in. And it's like, bitch, no, you can't insert the room because people blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, all right, fine.
All right, well, before you guys get into it.
So I restarted everything.
Tyler, do you remember when Anthony Fletcher called me out personally and I said, fine, give me the link, and he wouldn't give me the link, and I'm like, wait a minute, you call me out, and I'm like, okay, what the hell? I'm like, I got nothing to do. I'm bored. This was stupid. I'm happy to come in. And by the way, who's this guy? Jarl, do we know you? You're gonna have to like go in the group chat because I don't know who you are.
I think it's pronounced Jarl.
Jarl.
It's an old Nordic thing.
Jarl. Do we know
like
Jarl?
A low tier king.
You got 5 seconds to type in the group chat.
So, who is saying that I don't actually like? Skylar, were you saying that I don't actually hold my religious position that I hold?
No, sorry.
What is this shit?
No. So what I was saying is, and I might be wrong because I thought we had maybe had a conversation about it before. Mm-hmm. Is that like when you say you like believe in a Nordic god, or something like that.
Right. I've said several times I'm a polytheist.
Polytheist, exactly.
Yeah.
But you don't like really believe there's like an ancient, like a real ancient God.
I'm sorry.
Like
I'm going to interrupt. Skylar, are you in a dungeon right now?
Why does it sound bad? You see, I switched from my earpods. All right, I'm gonna switch back.
He's fucking fine. He's fine. He is talking through a can. Whatever. He's kind of echoey, but whatever. I can deal with it.
I'm gonna switch back to my regular headphones. It's okay. I have regular headphones. You're good. Go ahead. I can hear you. Go
ahead and switch. Go ahead and switch. We'll talk when everybody else is good and comfortable with your audio. All right, he's got the earbuds on. How's let's do testing 1 2.
Test. We're good. We're back now. Go ahead.
Okay. Cyborg, is that good enough for you? Can we talk now?
No, he needs to be muffled.
I'm so disappointed that these headphones don't sound good. Oh, okay.
All right. These headphones are all right. They're not too bad, but anyway. No. Why is it that everybody thinks that I don't? Holy shit!
Wow, that goes even worse now.
Can we get this fucking shit straight? All right.
when I mute, does that fix the extra?
Yes.
Can we go ahead and unmute? I want to see if you're echoing again.
Is it me?
All right. Hello. Testing 1 2 3. No, you're fine. Okay. Good Lord. All right. So I want to understand why everybody thinks that it's like, okay, Ocean, who says he's a polytheist in every single fucking hangout that he's in, doesn't actually believe in the gods.
I think you do.
He's not fucking saying he's a polytheist in every single fucking hangout.
Am I wrong?
I have never said to somebody, no, I don't actually believe in the gods.
Right. That's why
I've clarified every single time saying, yes, I do believe in the gods. And for some reason, I still get this, even after several years of being on Hangouts and being relative, like even in your room, Steve, still people going, oh, he doesn't actually believe this. Yes!
I've never said that.
No, I know you get it.
Yeah, I get it.
Because you're like friends of you. You see that like I'm, there's a group of us, and that anyway. But like, you're my friend on Facebook. You see me post about this shit every once in a while.
Do you understand that it's so out there that even Skylar's going, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, Skylar's confused. It's like that is the way. Multiple gods. What the fuck? Well, it's not like people have believed this for the majority of human history. It's not that's absolutely absurd, right?
Well, I'm not looking at it as absurd, but I'm curious which gods do you believe in, because you said you're pagan.
No, it's Norse pagan.
Odin.
That's the pantheon I go with, but I don't actively deny What, you want me to name fucking every single one of them before we move on?
No, I want Steve to name every one of them.
I named 3. What else do you want?
Good Lord.
I don't know. I don't think you really believe that. No.
I kind of like the Norse.
Why not?
I don't.
It's not his fault that Norse paganism is older than Christianity.
Yes.
I don't know why this is so hard, Skylar.
This is an old religion. It's more. It has less problems than Christianity from a philosophical.
Let me tell you, you don't believe.
It doesn't have. I don't think it has any philosophical problems. Actually, I will go ahead and sit down on that.
It's okay. My worldview is superior to both of yours.
Yeah, you're an atheist. But atheism is my worldview.
Anywho, like, what's so unbelievable about it?
Well, I think when we
is it just that it's minority or what? Like,
well, I think it's just like I think when we look at, and I guess Christianity. Well, it doesn't get a pass with me with this stuff, but like I think sometimes when we look at like these old ancient religions, right? Like it just kind of assumed it's bullshit, right? I know that's a shitty argument. Like I'm not trying to make it like I know it sounds shitty. It's a shitty argument.
I think it's not an argument. It's stupid because it's old.
Well, it's old, but like we kind of understand the cultures back then. They would do this kind of stuff. Like they would make up. Like this was part of the culture to make up gods because like they didn't.
How do you know they made them up?
Maybe I don't. I guess I don't know.
How do you know someone didn't take Mjolnir to a dude's balls one day and boom?
I guess I don't even know what to do with it. Like, to be honest with you,
that's usually the problem.
Have you guys ever read the Norse creation myth?
Why no?
Or the myth?
I honestly haven't. Yeah.
I do know the Norse creation story. Yes.
Oh, I've heard it.
Stupid as hell, man.
There's like several stages of it. I don't know which one you're talking.
I mean, it's not like any creation story.
Talking about the cow thing? Are you talking about the actual creation? Are you talking about like what are you talking about? Or are you just talking about the tree? Oh.
Well, let me ask you this.
The Gagunda Gap stuff.
So, let me ask you this then.
What's up?
What's up with the Nordic gods now? Like, what are they doing? Like, they still around? Like, is that like? Sure. I don't even remember the old Nordic stories. To be honest with you, I haven't read it. To be honest, like, so what's some of the things they used to do?
I mean, do you see frost giants
Thor Ragnarok? Thor Ragnarok next week. It'll tell you all about it.
God damn it!
Oh God,
we're gonna open up this movie.
Thor Ragnarok is actually.
I'll go watch it. Then I'll come back and debate.
It's a documentary.
There's the documentary by Marvel, the Thor movies.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we'll come back and talk to Ocean about his beliefs. No, that's as far as the gods, what they're doing now, it seems that they occasionally give us experiences of having a relationship with them of one way or another, and that's been their process of polytheistic gods throughout history. Is that they're a point of inspiration, they're a point of lessons, and that they're it might be responsible for the universe.
I mean, a pagan doesn't been to their gods.
So are they eternal? Like they've always been here, basically?
No.
Christian God, no.
They're temporal.
So how did they come into being?
There's multiple gods, so there's multiple different coming into beings that happen. Some of them would be relatives of other gods. Some of them came out of chaos or were grown out of the tree or whatever it is, whichever polytheistic faith you want to assert as the origin point.
About the origin of the whole paradigm here.
Yeah, I guess.
If you want to go back to like the beginning, you're just still a chaos. Shit.
Wouldn't chaos be like immortal
though? Chaos is not a god.
Oh, he doesn't get a godhood.
No, he's not
chaos is like a being.
He's not a mind. So
what is he?
It's not something that actually makes decisions. Like Yggdrasil. Yggdrasil is actually I actually like the Yggdrasil argument for the beginning better than the chaos argument, which is Yggdrasil is something that basically that is what is rather than there being nothing. And it is what grows universes out. It's the source for the bubbling fun of universes, the world tree. It forms universes. And it would also be that which forms the gods. So there's that. But it's simply an assertion. It's not something that's cornerstone for the belief system. I can't prove that.
Isn't an agent with the agency.
Chaos or Yggdrasil.
Yggdrasil they don't make decisions or anything.
No.
Like, are we talking about chaos in the sense of like the chaos in the universe? Or are you saying like what is chaos?
No, not chaos in the universe. Chaos. I mean, I keep saying Yggdrasil to go away from chaos, but chaos is the Greek idea of the beginning of the universe, that it is the primordial nothingness that randomly creates, out of which things come.
Now, can that just be quantum fluctuations by a different name?
Could be. I don't know. If you're talking about something that's in the universe rather than out of the universe, chaos would be something out of the universe.
Is it?
So what?
Well, I mean, how are you calling that a theist position, though, if that's just what science would call...
Because I believe in gods. So of course it would be a theist position.
Okay, so the theists came... Okay, so the gods came after all that, then?
Right.
Okay.
They would be another consequence of the initiating points of the universe.
What is it about physical laws of the universe that creates gods?
They're not part of the universe. So, or at least they're not in a way that is describable. They're disembodied agents. So I don't know how you would test that or what evidence you would expect for that.
So, but the chaos isn't conscious, though. It just
chaos itself. I don't think it would be conscious. It doesn't have to.
So, like, it
basically,
it kind of like accidentally created different gods with different abilities.
Accidentally implies also that it has intent. It just creates. It doesn't.
Like the nature of it.
Accidentally would imply that it is intended to do something else when there's no intention. Right. So chaos would be just something in which randomness comes out. It's the tornado that forms the airplane.
It almost sounds like quantum fluctuations just given by another name.
That's what I think I heard that somewhere before. Oh wait, that's what I said. I knew it sounded familiar.
Hold on a second, I gotta be back.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I'm parroting Steve now.
Oh, look at Ocean. Look at him run.
I don't know what to do with it. Like, no disrespect to Ocean. I just don't know what to do with it.
It sounds like he's just cool.
I mean, it sounds cool to me.
We got chaos, and instead of these gods, kind of like what do? They evolve from this chaos. So I don't know.
I don't know the mechanism by which they came into being. Still,
I mean, he's better than some of the people I found in the pagan Facebook group I joined.
And also, like, what makes them like why would we just define them as a god? Like, aren't they just beings with more abilities than us?
I love the one thing I do love is how he describes them. It says
if you believe Marvel,
he describes them and it says they're undescribable. It's like, okay, well,
that's always the best way to do it, though, isn't it? P. They're just I describe them as being undescribable.
Well, that's a great description,
isn't it?
Man, yeah.
Well, the other thing, once you get past this whole polytheism, at some point, Ocean wants to discuss his argument that atheism is a religion, which I kind of wanted to hear because obviously I think that's nuts. So,
yeah, astronomy is astronomy too. Not astronomy is astronomy. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to hear.
Maybe Skylar would be interested in taking him on the mantle of that one.
What? What do you say? We're not going to have an argument about what the definition of atheism is.
No, atheism is a religion.
Oh.
But it's defined in some dictionaries as a religion, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Well, I'm an atheist and I worship Kim Jong-un, so yeah, there we go.
The weakness. How is it a religion, though?
It can't be, because a religion is a set of things, and atheism is only on one single proposition.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to look it up now. I don't know how this dictionary, but it defines it as a religion.
Because atheism plus and new atheism you can make an argument those are religions. But I'm not talking about atheism plus or new atheism.
The weakness of polytheism, though, is that it's more dependent upon it's more weak to the objections regarding like whether or not prayers have been answered or not, because I mean that seems to be more of a integral part of like the polytheistic beliefs that the gods will answer prayers, and if the gods aren't answering your prayers, then what's the point of worshiping them at that point?
But can't you really say that about any religion? Like, really
under Christianity,
for any prayers in any religion?
Well, under Christianity, it's about the afterlife, whereas I'm not so sure about polytheism. I think it's more focused on this life.
So you're asking if you pray to a god, to an Odin or to a Norse god, if there's any interaction, or if there's any intercession between another thing and them that you're praying to. Because I don't know how it works. I don't know if there's an accessory prayer, if it's direct prayer, or how that.
Well, you sacrifice things to them and stuff like that, I'm sure.
To the Norse god?
Don't they have temples?
I mean, to some of them.
Well, I mean,
no.
They poke their eyes out. They poke one of their eyes out to please Odin, to try to get the win.
I mean, those are fanatics.
It worked. They got him off the island.
Yeah, I would just want to know, like,
yeah,
if the prayers are not answered, then what's the point of worshiping these gods?
Hey, I'm back.
That's what somebody had asked in the live chat. They like me to ask Ocean. So let me ask.
But Ocean, how is that evidence for anything? Because if a god existed, you would expect some to be answered and some not to be answered. The only way you could know that it's the god, then it would just be
having all prayers.
He tells you
having all prayers answered is evidence against a god, because then if you have all prayers answered, then it's not a god; it's a mechanism.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, but under polytheism, if the god never answers your prayer, then what's the point? Even if it does exist, what's the point of worshiping it?
Saying never answers your prayer? I'm not aware of a god who's never answered.
Well, let me ask it this way, because Sanders asked it in the live chat. Ask Ocean what he gains from believing Norse gods over any other or lacking a belief. So I guess what do you get over? Actually,
I think that there's an X factor that religion provides that atheism doesn't. And this goes for Christians as well. That's one reason why I have a limited respect for Christianity. that it is providing something that, as far as like purposeness or a foundation, that atheism just doesn't have. It doesn't try to have either, to be fair. But
yeah, but at this point, they're trying to force it on me.
What's the point?
It doesn't sound like you care if it's true. It's just if somebody provides an assertion, then it's then you're
no. It's whether or not it's true. Whether or not it's true is a different conversation.
No, I agree. Whether it's true, that's a different conversation. But I still don't see.
Yeah, you're saying like what is gained by it has nothing to do with.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if somebody just posits an explanation for something, this is it.
Some people are Christian because that's more comfortable for them, and I don't really have a problem with that.
That may be about some question. I'm talking about the argument that you just put forward. This whole what the words that you exactly use, but essentially. You're saying you think Christianity is more palpable because they have this explanation, but I don't see if it isn't true, or you can't evaluate if it's true or not. I don't see why that makes it, why your evaluation comes to that's a better system.
Whether or not it's a better system doesn't matter whether or not it's true. Like you're trying to mix those two things.
Do you think there's a salvation issue with any of the Norse gods? If you believe or you don't believe, it doesn't matter?
No. Okay. That's one of the Christianity is weird in that sense that it requires you to believe the same thing in a certain way.
All Valhalla really requires is an honorable death, right?
Yeah, but that's just one of the several afterlives in the Norse tradition.
So you couldn't get to Valhalla unless you die in a battlefield, right?
Right.
I mean, not exactly necessarily.
What?
As long as you die honorably.
No, you have to die on the battlefield.
I mean, like, say I'm walking down the street,
you die fighting.
To rape a woman, and I try and save her, and he stabs me in the fucking gut.
Yeah, that's still death in conflict and fighting.
Did the gods make the afterlife, or was this from the chaos?
That would be the gods, then.
Gods made the afterlife.
Yeah, Valhalla would be Odin's hall.
I mean, Odin made people, right? Him and his brothers.
That's the way the story goes.
But that's my point. That since there's the afterlife is not contingent upon you worshiping the gods, then you really have no reason to worship the gods unless they're giving you something.
Right, and polytheism as a tradition is a setup of gift exchange, essentially. So you give alms to the gods so that the gods may give alms to you, and it's a relationship of trade, essentially, gift giving. And
like bribery
say what?
As it sounds a little closer to bribery, like the more gifts I
mean, if you see giving someone gifts at Christmas as bribery, then fine.
Or
if you randomly give a gift to a friend, is that bribery? I don't.
But I mean, you get the rewards in this life, right? Right?
Yeah.
As opposed to Christianity, you got to wait until you die. So, okay.
Right.
Not necessarily. There's some Christians that, obviously they get some benefits out of it while in life. But I mean,
what are you giving about?
That's what they seek. Yeah, of course. But the Norse gods is pretty Nietzsche, right? As far as, and I mean that as they're in a niche, not like Nietzsche, like the philosopher, but they're in a niche. So I mean, like a billion Chinese people don't worship Odin. A billion Muslims don't worship Odin. How do they get their power when they only have like 500 people that still think these gods exist?
500 people is like the size of the group that I'm part of.
That's
way more than that.
I mean, how many people worship Odin?
It's probably thousands. A lot, though, because
there's several thousand, if not a few million.
Yeah, because Steve Harris said that he used to say the Odin gods during his statements, and then he started getting a lot of emails from people talking about, hey, the Norse gods, I believe that. Stop saying that nobody believes this.
Steve, I hate to say something, but you have said to point out logical fallacies when you make it. Well, if it's an appeal to a number of followers, and that's a logical fallacy.
That wasn't where I was going with my argument. I'm not making any appeal. My argument was going toward these gods draw power off their followers.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
And that's especially true with Odin. I've seen American Gods.
What the fuck?
Did you watch American Gods? They draw power from their followers. They don't get. That's how they maintain their celestial whatever. They have to have followers.
Sorry, Hey,
Neil Gaiman wrote this, so it has to be true.
Yes, of course. Neil Gaiman is, of course, God.
So So I have a quick question for Ocean. Are these gods we believe in? Are they like corporeal, material beings?
I think I said no earlier, but no.
Okay.
Like, what was the moment, Ocean, that like you started believing in them? Like, what was it that did it?
Well, see, I took some mushrooms and then
what was your moment of clarity or whatever?
How high were you?
Like that you were like, you know what? I believe this.
Sorry, I'm eating, so I'm sorry. It's like I've been terse because I'm trying to shove food in my mouth. Hold on a second.
No,
take your time.
Okay,
dude, seriously.
Honestly, I would most definitely be more attracted personally to the Norse mythology, especially because I love that one of the stories that is passed down in that is that there was a man who asked to be burned alive.
Yeah, see, that's the only thing I see with like these kind of religions, like especially ancient religions. Like I guess they're all ancient, I guess in a sense, but like it just seems. I guess the only thing you could really go on is it just sounds appealing, right? Like I kind of fall into like what I fell in with deism, where I was at one point like it just sounds good to me. Like this sounds romantic.
Are you not a deist anymore? Are you an atheist?
No, I kind of consider myself agnostic now.
Okay.
And
what week is this?
Shut the fuck up. You know what? I held two positions. I only held two positions here in 4 years of Google Plus, which was agnostic and deist.
I'm fine with it. I think that's very sound to be able to adjust your positions like that. As long as you don't do like the Brett Keane. You can't go from atheist to Christian to atheist to agnostic. That doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
You know how many people told me that they thought
someone's asking me about my journey to this shit.
Yeah. That's what, so I was asking, what was it? What was the moment that was like, you know what?
It was gradual. It's not like, I went from Christianity to paganism very gradually. Like there was a point in there where I tried out atheism, but it didn't go very well. But there were several points where after a while I came to the conclusion that Christianity is rather ridiculous. But I still felt that there was a value in spirituality. And that there was something to that spiritual experience that I was getting with Christianity, kind of, but that was stronger when I was in other areas, like Celtic Christianity. That feeling of that spiritual feeling of experience was stronger there, and I investigated further into that and found Celtic paganism and Nordic paganism, and those were. The journey in that direction was it was more rewarding, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Well, like what convinced you about it? Like what was it like about the Nordic religion that was like, you know what, this seems to make the most sense, or the polytheism, and like this seems to make the most sense.
Polytheism in general, I think, is a kind of an acceptance that spiritual experiences exist and that gods exist. I don't have an affirmation that the world was created in this way by Odin. I agree with the Yggdrasil idea, but I'm not going to say that. It is perfectly coherent to me to say that Odin exists and New-Wa exists, or that they may be the same thing, or that they may be different aspects of the same thing, but that what is revealed to us is this, and that we can follow this tradition because this is how, say, my ancestors, for example, worship this way.
Well, Ocean, thanks. First thing I want to say, thanks for sharing. I think it's an interesting story of how you actually went through this evaluation. But what brought you back from? It seemed like you believed in a God, and then you just didn't believe the concept, and then you believed the concept again. So how was that transition like from I believe to I don't believe to now I believe, but in a different way?
No, I say that I tried out atheism and it didn't go well. It was me trying to assert it because. Hold on a second. I've got some chicken in my mouth. I literally have a cock in my mouth right now.
You rarely have a cock in your mouth?
There's some chicken. Hold on. I got to swallow. Anyway, so when I say that I was into this
swallow.
for a little while, it was me trying to be like, all right, so if I'm leaving Christianity, it doesn't make sense for me to like, sort of monkey swing right into another religion. I should at least examine the idea that all of it's bullshit for a little while, and kind of investigate that. And I'd been already like an avid viewer of like Thunderfoot, and I was aware of like Aaron Ra and a few of these other guys, and I'd been watching that as a Christian for some time, thinking that like Thunderfoot's going after like the easy targets like Venom Fang X or other creationists and so on. And creationism was never a problem for me as a Christian. I was an old earther, if you will. So it was like, all right, well, let's just reject everything for a little bit. But it felt empty. It didn't feel right. And it got to the point where it's like, it actively not exploring what this is doesn't make sense to me. I should be exploring what this is. It's something that's a matter of curiosity for me. So I might as well explore it. So I went back to exploring it. And in exploring it, I came to these conclusions that polytheism is a stronger position. It's one that explains for spiritual experiences happening all over the world with different explanations, with different entities being described. It's like, all right, well, fine. Well, there's more than one entity. That's been always the problem with Christianity, is that there's other religions, right? No, with polytheism, that's not a problem. Polytheists in old times, when they came across other cultures that had different religions, their perspective was, oh, we have found new gods. It's not that, they're false worshiping, or that, they actually worship Odin, but in a different way.
Real quick,
I would say Christianity is not. I disagree with your assertion about Christianity, because they do posit the other gods, but they say they are inferior to.
They're demons or something like that, or
God Almighty. So they could explain the same phenomenon in the way that you've put forward through polytheism, just in a different hierarchy, where you have one superior god and all these inferior gods doing all this particular work.
But then there's other problems with that, though, because they're saying that their god is like the all-powerful, the original, and all this other jazz, and there's several claims that go along with it. It eventually create an incoherent being, which makes me think this god is lying somewhere along the way.
Do you think that these gods get upset when you attribute something they do to another deity?
Oh, I don't know.
So what's the point of them? Why do they? I don't understand what point that they have to even interact with us. What do they get out of it then?
You were talking about
that's something for them to answer. I don't know. Like, I think that the gods could be perfectly fine enough not interacting with us at all. But
how do we open a communication?
That's not what
I want to
seems
talk to Odin. How do I do it?
Right. So I had this conversation with Crocoduck briefly, and what we agreed on eventually was like, well, if you could have some kind of way to empirically observe the gods, like a godoscope or of some kind, then sure, we can answer these questions. Right now, we don't have answers to these questions, and the fact that we don't have answers to these questions doesn't necessarily weaken the position, because what the position is based on is spiritual experiences take place. They're all over the world. They have there's people that are otherwise rational seem to have them, and it's worth exploring. It's not worth throwing out simply because, I can't explain what they get out of it.
But these gods aren't really the same kind of thing like with a Christian god who wants to have this whole faith thing. These Norse gods don't seem to care, if you believe in them on faith. Why don't they just reveal themselves?
I think that the importance that Christians have on faith is just a trapping.
They can actually be real in the Christian world too. They could be the inferior gods that Christianity talks about.
I get that, but what prevents these Norse gods from, hey, going, look, we exist, worship us or pay homage or whatever? What does then happen? They don't have to hide behind this. Oh, you have to have faith in me.
They don't hide behind. I don't think they need it. I don't think they care. It's whether or not you are following them is completely up to you.
If they don't,
it doesn't affect your afterlife. I think that if a Muslim dies gloriously in battle, then they can go to Valhalla.
So these Norse gods don't care if you believe in them or not.
Not from what I know. Like it's not evident in the stories. The stories about them, there are points of interaction. So there's something, but
I don't know. And where did you say these gods inhabit? You said they inhabited a higher plane or something like that?
Yeah, if you look at the structure of Yggdrasil, it makes sense to say that they would be like alternate universes or dimensions or something.
And all right, and you, because I forgot the description you kind of said they were undescribable and they had this higher plane. And,
no, I didn't say they were undescribable. Shit, I said that they are disembodied minds, higher consciousness, and that they have great power of some kind.
Higher consciousness in another dimension, and I just hate to be the buzzword in the room, but how were we able to, not to say that you're a liar, but how are we able to?
No, you can't. So that's one of the things that doesn't necessarily, like, I don't care about that part of the argument. Whether or not I can justify my experience to you is, we know that we can't do that. I can't even prove to you that I'm real without getting into the solipsism conversation. So when I'm trying to describe to you an experience that I've had and say that, hey, Odin is correct, Odin is true because of X, X, and X, all those things are things that are experience based, and I'm not going to be able to demonstrate. So the fact that I can't demonstrate it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not true. It doesn't mean it is true either. Well, so I'm not going to be able to walk away from this conversation and say, now you should be a polytheist because of X reasons.
No, and trying to understand a person and trying to understand your justification for these positions and trying to just have a better understanding of what you're talking about.
Right. The justification is personal.
I wanted to also, if you say you believe in this, I also wanted to see, well, what part could I also hear, or what happened to you that also can help me believe in this particular way of being, because this may be true as you're saying, but then when someone makes a claim and says this is a state of affairs, it's true that I'll never be able to verify. But if you're suggesting that something is one particular way, something that I don't understand, and I'm asking you, how did you come to that conclusion? You say, well, I can just assert it, and I don't need to come to.
No, it's not that I'm just asserting.
Like, how are we really having an honest?
Play that. I'm not just asserting.
You kind of like put up this wall, and when I say, well, how did you get over this wall? And you say, well, I don't really care about getting over the wall. I just have a fact that there's a wall. I'm trying to get.
I agree with you that the wall exists as far as me trying to give to you information about my experiences. There's just a wall there.
Like, even epistemic limitation. I get you for that.
As far as the experiences I've had that I use to justify my believing in this, for me, is going to be different than me being able to say to you, let me finish the goddamn statement.
Sorry.
It's going to be different than when I'm trying to justify to you the same position to say that you should agree with me. When I'm saying that you should agree with me, I need to put forward something else, something that's stronger than what I've got. And I'm happy to admit that I need to have something stronger than what I've got.
No, I totally agree with you that you have an epistemic limit on that. Look, we all have experiences. I have experiences. You've had experiences. My only thing is, if I look at my experiences, how do I relate them? Nothing in my experiences would ever say I can somehow point this to the Norse gods. There's no correlation there whatsoever as an explanation.
I'm sorry, say again.
You've had experiences. I think we've all kind of had some kind of experiences. There's nothing that I can relate my experiences to that would ever translate into an explanation that would require Norse gods to explain it. It just doesn't point to that direction in any way, shape, or form. I didn't know anything about Norse gods until recently. I mean, other than Odin existed. Okay, and I don't
know if this answers your question, but you've had some experiences. Fine. It's the group that I'm a part of. There's several Norse pagans involved. The vast majority of them are that way because of some kind of personal experience that took place that brought them into this religion. So it's the main justification that takes place when that gets in is that personal experience. So I don't know what you're saying about what doesn't bring you to this conclusion.
Well, I mean, why not like the Greek pantheon? Why not the Roman pantheon? And I
don't deny either one. Okay. I think the Greek pantheon and the Roman pantheon are the same thing. I think that historically
different names. Okay, sure.
But I don't have a problem with someone saying that Zeus is real in the same sense that I'm saying Odin is real. There's not a disagreement there.
Yeah, but how does your experience point to that?
That's my question exactly. My experiences don't point to that. I never had anything happen that I would be like, okay, this would be attributed to what I would say Zeus or Odin or anything. It's just absolutely nothing. I mean, it makes very little sense to use that as an ad hoc explanation for things I've experienced. I've never seen them in visions or something either. I've never had,
I'm
not a vision.
This is real to him. He's saying he believes this and it seems real to him.
I get
in his
that.
reality.
I get that, but I'm saying he's talking about people having experiences. Well, I've had experiences as well, but I don't attribute them.
It's also a collective thing. Like, so I'm validated in that in one experience that leads me to believe from an uncertain perspective, hey, this is Odin. Then other people have similar experiences in which they have a similar conclusion, and then you can go back through history and see, like, this is several people have had these experiences and come to this conclusion. Now, maybe all of them are fucking wrong. There's no way for us to know because we can't experience everybody's experience.
No, but I think they did experiences.
Understand the conclusion.
But you're kind of jumping over the point that we kind of sort these things out for things that are more believable than others. For instance, if a whole bunch of people have a shared experience in a science experiment or trying to verify something like that, we would be more confident in their results than if a whole bunch of people had shared experiences, saying they saw a Bigfoot or even alien abduction. So, just because you do have these shared experiences, we do evaluate these claims in a rational way.
Right, but when we're talking about something that is, in a sense, I mean, honestly, it's an unfalsifiable claim. Any God-related claim, any spiritual-related claim, even the claim that of the human soul existing, is going to be unfalsifiable.
Well, so unless you posit
we're dealing with something that's. Say what?
Unless you posit a self-refuting being, there's some types of
right. If you have a being that's incoherent, then that's another issue, though. But a God claim is going to be unfalsifiable as long as you have a coherent set.
Yes.
So when we're trying to look at it and figure, like you're talking about through a science experiment, when you're talking about an entity that, as described, does not leave empirical evidence, then what science experiment, if science is based on empiricism, is going to produce any information, negative or positive?
Like, let's even remove science. Really, is there any way, period, to and you're asserting, and I agree with you, that there is not. If I can, it's as open as a claim if I asserted that there are pink unicorns on everyone's shoulder and you can't see them because by definition they are invisible.
I think that's a bad analogy.
No one in this room could deny that exists, because I've set up the parameters where it has to exist and you can't verify it at all. And I'm just saying that seems to be where the argument has led us to.
I have a counter to that is there several thousand years of history of people believing in invisible pink unicorns on my shoulder? Of whole civilizations being convinced by this.
But we can also extend that to space aliens. We can extend
polytheism has that.
We can extend it to thousands of years of people seeing the Loch Ness Monster. Just because you've had time doesn't mean that ridiculous things that people used to understand or believe are true. The time factor doesn't determine whether it's actually actual.
I mean, there's a case to be made that a lot of things that we did.
I have several objections. I think that the Loch Ness Monster is an empirical claim, and second, that the difference between these two, your example, the analogy of the pink unicorn on the shoulder, it still has the issue of, well, there's not a historical precedence for this. There's not people honestly experiencing that. Like, a lot of times when everyone says, well, when someone says, I assert that I'm Elvis or something like that, or I assert that I experience Elvis in my living room or some shit. This isn't something that has a serious rational history of people, otherwise rational people, seriously being convinced by this. But whereas with polytheism, you do have this long history.
So if let's say I do add time and I grant your objection, I say, okay, well, time seems to be a factor, but then we do have ridiculous claims, things that we know aren't really that seem not to be true, that we don't believe also, even with the time factor. For instance, we can go speak to people now who said they've been abducted by aliens, and we can go back in time, get people from even farther back, and then say that these people all have this shit experience over a set amount of time. If you need longer time, we can go to the Loch Ness Monster, and if you need longer time, we can go to other myths that we all agree just did not think that don't
the
exist.
Loch Ness monster again.
So what I'm saying is that just because you've added 7,000 years of time of people having these experiences doesn't really validate it. It does. Gives me a strong indication of something they're experiencing something, but it doesn't have to be the conclusion that you just set forward. By no
I
means.
agree with you that it doesn't have to be that conclusion. I think that's one thing that anybody who's religious, especially polytheist, there is a leap that takes place there when they're saying that, when they're affirming, yes, this is the tradition that I'm going to follow. This is how I'm going to go about worshiping the gods. And those people have different expressions of their pantheon. My pantheon, for example, is a combination of 3 different traditions. It's a Greco-Roman, Celtic, and Norse. Focus on the Norse, because that's the main tradition that I follow. But whenever there's a polytheist goes, this is how I'm going to worship the gods, there is a certain amount of risk of that, because you are establishing, yes, all right, I'm going to interact with, or I'm going to make the attempt to interact with something that people have been interacting with throughout history in different traditions with that. Well, yeah, again, it's an exchange of gifts.
What happens if he came down and stood in front of you?
I think that you've taken that, and now you're running in a different direction with it.
What happens if he actually did come down in front of you and he said,
we're talking about the validation aspect first, because it is a risk, I guess, that you're saying that, like, oh, well, I may be actually worshiping Zeus, but calling him Odin.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying, what if Odin himself appeared to you? Would you be like, oh shit, I've been right all this time? Would it actually surprise you, or you'd be like expecting it?
I'm generally skeptical, so I wouldn't take that as really.
You would deny God if he came in front of you? You would say, I'm skeptical, you're God?
Yes. So I'm a generally skeptical person, so if I have an experience that's like that is unlike any other spiritual experience that's taken place, I'm going to wonder, all right, well, is this a hallucination of some kind? Well, this doesn't make sense.
Up there would be able to convince you that they were God without even under your most skeptical mind. One of these gods wouldn't be able to convince you.
I deal with any spiritual experience with skepticism generally.
Real quick, how this turned into the MP Bring It Theist? This is supposed to be Skylar fiction. What happened to Skylar? Just out of curiosity, Skylar, did you get?
I'm supposed to be eating.
I can't do anything with Nordic religions. I don't
wait, he's a theist.
Skylar's just kind of throwing up his hands.
I don't even know enough about him.
If you wanted to go against a theist, in comes a polytheist, and I throw a wrench in your whole shit.
Skylar gets his ass handed to him.
I win.
But I mean, the thing is, like, Ocean already admitted, it's just like these are just assertions and claims. Like, this isn't like he's not like saying
from a debate perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
From a personal perspective, there's plenty of justification, but it has to do with experiences.
Sure, I wanted to ask something.
I do understand Ocean's point of view on that. I've said the same thing. Look, these things are justified by our own personal experiences, and because we have that epistemic limit, it's hard to show other people our justification for certain things. I get that, right? Yeah. I'm not going to throw a wrench in that and say that's bullshit. It's true. We all have that thing. But there are people out there that do say, look, this is true. I believe this, and I can show you that it's true. At that point, I think they have a high greater burden than the normal person just says, yeah.
What I do is I'll say, I can show you that it's better than monotheism. And I can show you that it has a justification that
I don't agree with. But
I can show you that it's a better perspective to be the default than atheism. But I'm not going to be able to do it.
Well, that's interesting. So why would it be better than monotheism?
Oh, there we go. Okay. Piqued his curiosity.
Monotheism has problem of evil and Euthyphro dilemma.
Not necessarily. Not with a general deist, like a theist.
Yeah.
God.
Oh, when you get into general deism, then you're going to get in. It's. Do you hold that he's omniscient, or do you strip away the rest of the Christian ideas?
Well, yeah. I mean, you could take. Yeah, exactly. You can strip away all the Christian ideas. You could just take a creator.
Say you have one finite entity that pressed a button and said,
an aesthetic deity. An aesthetic deity created the universe just because he thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, I don't generally have a problem with that. I think that's something that you get into the same problem that atheists run into when it comes to spiritual experiences happening all over the world. Why are people having spiritual experiences all over the world when there's when the only God that exists is one that doesn't interact at all?
Well, it kind of begs the question a little bit, like that people are actually having spiritual experiences. Like, I think people describe these things as spiritual experiences.
Sure.
But it's kind of like just a product.
Do you agree with me that people that are otherwise rational human beings do have spiritual experiences, honestly?
Well, I think people claim that they have spiritual experiences and they're rational.
Well,
right?
When they describe a spiritual experience, do you think they're lying, or do you think that?
No.
They claim is. Do you think that they're wrong?
You guys need to define your term spiritual here, because people can have spiritual things.
I think that we both know kind of what we're talking about.
I get what Ocean's saying. Okay. Right? So let me give you an example. So when I was a Christian, I would go to Christian church, and we would start doing praise and worship. Right.
Sure.
Like you get this almost like euphoric feeling. Yeah. Right. You're in the moment and you're praying and you're feeling good and things like that. And I think it more just has to do with the situation, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're giving all those worries up in a sense, right? Because at this point you're believing that there's some kind of God that cares and loves you, right? And then you're surrounded by people who also believe the same thing. Right, and that has power, and you're listening to music because they do all these things, like they play worship music.
Oh yeah, they definitely like play it up, right? Yeah,
absolutely, right. So all these things affect you. So you're hearing music, you're believing what they're saying. People around you are showing you love. They're caring about you, right? So this emits like this positive response within you, right? Your brain might, I don't know if it's endorphins or what would you call it? Releases chemicals in your brain that make you feel good because of the situation, right? And then people attribute that situation as like a spiritual experience. So I don't think it's they're lying. I think that's the way they feel. They feel that they're relating that to the experience, but it isn't necessarily what's happening. Is you're tricking yourself into believing this.
Okay. What do you think about people that might have these experiences when they're alone if they don't have these other factors?
Well, no, I think it's the same thing, right? So I'll give you an example. So like when I was really hardcore Christian, I would go into my room, I would play Christian music, and I would just sit there and pray. Like, just pray for hours. Like, literally sit there, sing and pray and just thank God. And nothing would be on my mind. No worries, no concerns. It would be all about focusing on God and giving up my stress, giving up my worries to Him, right? Mm-hmm. And it's basically the same thing as what the Buddhists do, where they stop thinking about themselves. And they chant and they get their mind off of their worries, and it causes a euphoric feeling because most of the time you're worried about shit. You're worried about your job. You're worried about your family. You're worried about yourself or whatever other kind of fucking problems you have in life, basically. And I think what happens is when you get in that mode where for a moment you meditate, you're silent, you're quiet in your thoughts, and that causes a euphoric reaction within your body. That would be it would be similar to the same thing as what I would guess.
I think that's spot on, dude. I mean, we've all okay, maybe not all, but a lot of us have done stuff like that. Some of my greatest times have been doing meditation and going into an induced lucid state. Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's very, very difficult to do. I can safely say that I've probably done it less than 5 times. But when you do reach that state, and because you hear about people reaching those states, you hear this people transcendental meditation, and growing up is kind of like, yeah, I've had lucid dreams, but I don't know if I'd call it lucid transcendental. But when you're actually able to do it yourself, you're right. Everything just kind of, all your worries, everything kind of vanishes, and you're in a whole different reality.
It feels right. Everything
totally
feels
legit.
perfect.
Totally legit. It's a real shit. Yeah,
it's like a runner's high. Like when a runner starts running and they get that high feeling.
Did they respond?
Huh?
I want to respond. Because
no, go ahead. Yeah.
Like I understand what you guys are talking about, but so
have you done it?
Done what? Done that?
Put yourself into done meditation or put yourself in a lucid state?
Yeah.
On purpose? Okay.
Yeah. I think that I distinguish between meditation and spiritual experience, but because I think meditation is self-imposed. Spiritual experience is when there's maybe something else involved.
Okay, so, but you can see that somebody could take it either way.
That's begging the question by definition, right? So we get some people that when you say people have spiritual experiences, what Skylar is saying that he's providing an alternative explanation to people that claim to have spiritual experiences and say that it's actually a form of meditation. Somewhat is that correct?
Yeah, Skylar? Yeah. That would be another way of saying it. Basically,
if we wanted to distinguish the two through that of saying meditation is self-imposed, spiritual experience is external, then you would say that people that are claiming spiritual experiences are actually taking part in a meditation of some kind, or fooling themselves into thinking
Yeah.
there's
I mean, people have a spiritual experience with the solar eclipse, right? I mean,
like the double rainbow guy. Remember the guy fucking did
Oh,
a
yeah, I love that fucking video.
fucking double rainbow. Like that guy at that moment was having a fucking spiritual experience.
he thought he saw Jesus.
He started fucking crying. It was wonderful.
Yeah,
Wait, what double rainbow? What?
Oh, go to YouTube
Okay.
and just type double rainbow guy, and
This was years ago. It was all over the internet.
Oh, yeah.
If you didn't see it, you missed out, buddy.
Ocean, I'm very curious about something.
I want to respond.
Sorry.
Well, let Kelsey.
What the response basically is once we've established, okay, we're talking about meditation and spirituality, and that's the definition difference between the two of them. That when people are describing that they had a spiritual experience and you're dismissing by saying, no, this was actually a meditation, I think that you are dismissing their experience as self-described as something else. But I think that you should have a reason beyond, like, what's the reason that you're doing that? Are you just saying that it makes sense to you, or that?
Well, here's what I would say, right? So I now know Christianity is fucking complete bullshit, right? So at the time, I didn't, right? So obviously, it wasn't the Christian God that was making me feel like this. Now I know that. So I've got to think it was the circumstances. So what
sounds
about
like begging the question.
I don't know if it is, because I'm using like so like what, so in that moment, right? If I'm not, was it some other God making me feel like that, even though I'm worshiping some kind of Christian God?
I've actually had the conversation with Christians that I don't necessarily deny that the Christian God exists. I just don't think that it's entirely as described, because I think the way it's described is incoherent. And I don't have any like I don't have any reason to worship that God, because I think that the God is disgusting, because the way that he's described is that he's kind of a shithead, right? So let's say that the Christian God is real for a second, and it's a morally demanding God, and one that is very jealous and so on. All these things that it describes, it's just not omnipotent. It's not the creator. So the interaction that you're having may have in fact been with whatever God that is, or it may have been with a different God. Just we were talking about earlier. We were talking about earlier how anybody who's going to be a polytheist also takes a risk that what they're worshiping is actually that concept, right? So when you're a Christian, you're taking the risk of saying this interaction that I'm having, it is associated with the entity described in these books.
Okay, but Ocean, I've had interactions with, quote, entities in these lucid states. None of them have ever introduced me as being a deity. They've never said, I am such and such, or even...
I haven't had that experience either, so that's kind of beside the point as well.
And they're vivid people. I mean, you literally feel like you're talking to somebody. I mean, they like you would anybody else. That's the degree of interaction.
Is this the reason why you're agnostic, is you've had these experiences, but you don't know how to justify them?
Sure. I mean, my issue is that not just the lucid dreams, but there's been I mean, I've actually been able to lift my hands out of my body and actually sit there and look through my hand and sit there and turn it 360. I mean, and take my hands and touch them together and feel tactile sensation. Now, I agree, there's probably in the brain, it's probably all just a form of lucid dreaming, but they're so unimaginably vivid and intense, and unless you've experienced it, it's hard to describe. Because I mean, I seriously can sit there and stare right through my hand and go, this is tripping me out here. I'm wide awake. I'm totally wide awake.
It's something that you're doing without the aid of any sort of external...
No drugs, nothing like that, just self-meditation. And then I'll be able to take my hand, just kind of raise it up, but even though it's not moved, it's not
having kind of like
actually lifted up. My hands are actually laying on the bed.
How long have you spent
having kind of the Alex Gray experience, right?
Steve, I'm curious now. Have you ever tried to test with that? Have you ever tried putting it to the test on whether that is a spiritual experience or just...
Yeah, I mean, I've tried various things. There's something I can really do to validate that it's anything like a dualism thing. I mean, all my girlfriends I've ever dated, they've all known that if I start screaming, that means to wake me up, because I'm in such a state of sleep paralysis that I can't take it anymore. And it feels really like it's putting too much strain on my body, like I might have a heart attack or something. And that's when I start trying to scream to let them know to not knock me out of it.
So I'm gonna get back to, because I think that's really interesting, Steve. I think we should probably explore that at some point, but because it's right up my alley, right?
Yeah, well, I'm fine with that. I mean, but my only issue is I can never relate that to God. I've had other experiences, right? But just I'm talking about this, that, like there. I don't know how that relates to God. At most, it can provide evidence for dualism if that's the case.
Sure.
but it doesn't get me to.
I think that dualism is kind of step one towards polytheism. That you kind of have to agree with dualism.
Yeah, I agree, but it doesn't get you all the way there. I'm sorry.
No. That's when, like the idea of polytheism is basically the assertion that these entities that you're experiencing are worthy of reverence and of gifted exchange and ritualistic practice and worship practice.
You know, Ocean, I'll tell you what, I have done one experience you might find interesting, because people, and this was not even that long ago, I don't know, like 7 or 8 years ago, I guess, but somebody had told me, well, do an experiment. You know, when you have these entities, tell them to get away from you in the name of Jesus, right? And I'm like, yeah, whatever, we'll give it a shot, right? And as soon as I did that, I'm not even kidding, they kind of looked at each other like, what? Like, nothing happened. They're like, yeah, and it was like no response whatsoever. And I was like, okay, never mind. So what's happening? And I started talking to them.
That's funny.
It was just two entities. I was like in a room, and I'm like, okay, get away from me in the name of Jesus. And they're like, it's just like, they're like, what the hell is that supposed to do? It was weird.
It was like what it was a nice experiment, but why the fuck did you think it would work? He was like, I know. Yeah, it was interesting. Like
that's what
I think the reason why it didn't work is because you're not a Catholic priest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, no, I don't even.
But that's the thing. When you're in that state, you are aware to the point where you can make conscious decisions. You know, does it make sense?
Skylar, do you see where I'm trying to establish something with Skylar on the line of thought. So we're at because the point that I want to make is that you shouldn't be dismissing spiritual experiences as actually a meditation, simply because it needs to have a good reason to actually say that this experience is not as you described it, is in fact how I described. Right, because that's been the problem with Christians, is they'll say, well, you're not experiencing gods, you're actually experiencing demons, which is the same kind of argument, right? And say you're not experiencing what you're experiencing, you're experiencing what I'm describing.
Yeah, but I don't. There's nothing about, like, I guess when we're saying like that, so like I don't understand why we would just. So I guess I'd have to ask you what it is. Now I have to ask you what a spiritual experience is, right? Because if you're going to say the spiritual experience comes from God, like, it just assumes that whatever you want to call a spiritual experience.
I would say that you were describing it perfectly when you were talking about prayer. Like, right? when you're giving prayer and you're receiving an elation that is the taking on of those burdens, that you're giving it onto something else, then that's a spiritual experience. I would accept that.
I just don't see where God needs to come in then. Because like you don't need a God.
Like you can explain it as being a mental trick. If you want to go Occam's razor with it and say instead this is something. Well, I mean, Occam's razor, you could go both ways with it, because it's easier. It's less steps to say that it's as described rather than as something other, or as it appears rather than an illusion. And then you could also say that it's simpler without a God, and it's just of one entity rather than two. But I think that even with Occam's razor of monotheism versus polytheism wins out. Because more gods is simpler than one god. So I don't know if that would work there either.
More gods is simpler than one god,
but way simpler.
But we get to a situation where it's like basically two ideas, and maybe it seems like a dichotomy. Maybe it's wrong. Maybe I'm wrong here, right? Mm-hmm. So it's either this spiritual experience is caused by some form of God, right, or the spiritual experience is caused by something else, non-supernatural.
Right, that it's maybe like brain chemistry or some sort of.
Correct, yeah, and then but I don't see any justification for the God aspect, right? Like we can see
justification either way.
Sure. Well, we can see justification like runner's high, right? Like people just start feeling good, like they start running and they get this thing called a runner's high. Like we see things within, we see things like love. Love's a great example.
I've had runner's high. I just wouldn't really compare it to having a.
Yeah, I've had runner's high too, but it's nowhere near like.
Well, let's not use that. Let's use something like love. I think love could be what sometimes people would call a spiritual.
I think love is a similar experience to.
Love is chemicals.
That's exactly what I'm making.
Love is an interaction.
Right. Well, that's the point I'm making, is like that feeling of love can feel very, very similar, if not equal to a spiritual.
Which would also be an interaction.
Which would also be like spiritual interaction. But the thing is, like, we understand love, like, because in that way. But I just don't see any reason to believe why this feeling someone has, we would equate it to a God. Like there's no reason to believe God makes us feel anything besides just reading old text.
Yeah, well, why do you?
Yeah, in the moment, do you? I mean, as a Christian, when you were having these experiences, did you feel like that there was an external presence?
Yeah.
Like, if someone had asked you, it's like, hey, do you feel like there's an external presence? And even you now, as a non-believer, you might say, well, yeah, I felt like there was an external presence, right?
But that was predicated on some things, right? Because I was told all these other things. Because I was told there's a Christian God, and I believe the text and all this other kind of stuff. So, like, there was reasons I believed that. They reinforced that. So when I had that feeling, I just went to what I believed, what I was taught, basically.
Sure. And then when you're going to the other side and saying, I reject Christianity, now you have the same experience that without a God. It doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't a God. You're describing it in a way now where you're like, okay, well, I'm having the same experiences taking place, but because I hold the belief that there aren't gods, I'm going to explain this experience in a different way. You may actually be having the spiritual experience. You just refuse to accept the idea that you're having the spiritual experience.
No, I'm willing to accept that it could be a spiritual experience, but there's no evidence to show that. Like there is evidence to say that there's
other than
reasons.
You in the experience have the experience that it is external to you. If you have the understanding that it's external to you, then that would be personal evidence of that being the fact. We wouldn't be able to empirically write it down and be like, "Here you go, Ocean. Skylar Skylar had this experience."
With that. I think we agree with that. But you're equating. You're saying that this is some type of evidence or reflection of something else, and we're trying to understand that connection. How are you making that connection?
That it's external.
No, that
something external,
entity that you've posited, these polytheistic entities.
Oh, the specific entities.
You're saying that here's an effect, and you're saying that these entities that it's. I don't want to say proof, but it in some way relates to the conversation of these entities existing, and I'm trying to understand how. If you're saying, well, everything that Skylar's saying is true, then that doesn't. Then to me, then it's like it's nonsensical to talk about because it doesn't really tell anything about your position.
Why is it nonsensical to talk about if people are having the experience?
Well, no, because if you're saying that what Skylar's saying is correct, it could just be totally naturalistic. Then I don't understand why is it in the conversation because we're trying to understand.
It doesn't mean that
you're just saying that yes, Skylar could be right, but
you're saying that it could be. It doesn't mean that it is.
But wouldn't you agree? There's more evidence to show that it's naturalistic than from a spiritual aspect.
Hold on. Wait. So two people ask questions at the same time.
Sorry, let me say that one more time. So wouldn't you argue that there's more evidence that it would be a naturalistic thing, that your brain is having this feeling because of natural causes, than it would be to say that it's some kind of Nordic gods that are making you feel this way?
No. I wouldn't agree with that. So with the evidence set that we would expect to have with Nordic gods is that which exists. The evidence set that we would expect to have for it being naturalistic is that which also exists. So we have the same evidence set for both. Therefore,
why would I expect under a Nordic god that what I would expect it to have these feelings?
There's never been an interaction of anything differently. But what are you?
But wouldn't you base all this on your text, right? Like the only knowledge you have of Nordic gods would be based on the text in the mythology in a negative way, but
mythology is fine. I know what you're talking about.
Like wouldn't the only
I say mythology?
Yeah, like the only knowledge you have of the Nordic gods is based on mythology,
right?
So like, I don't see why that would be a more valid reason to like, because it would be basically the same argument.
I'm looking at it from generally that it's either polytheism or it's naturalism. Now, polytheism, it might not be the Nordic gods. We can say that maybe it's a different entity. It doesn't, just because if somebody in India has an experience, it doesn't mean that it's Odin. You know, maybe Odin is not caring about that geography right now. Maybe it's actually Shiva or some shit.
Can I ask something just to understand?
Not in the middle of my explaining a point. Like in the middle. Like, wait a minute, what you're saying is not important enough. I need to say something. I need to ask. Anyway, so if somebody in India is having their experience and it's not Odin, it's actually Shiva, polytheism is still true there, and it's still a reasonable position to hold in that setting. It's like, all right, well, it's this entity instead of this other entity. But the only thing in order for it to mean that polytheism is plausible is the idea that it's possible that that which is inspiring a spiritual experience is in fact a God, as defined in the polytheistic setting.
Let's better question.
I just want to add this one thing, and it seems like what you've done is you've come up with this idea of polytheism has aligned itself so much with just being natural, then that you've made this dichotomy. Well, it could be polytheistic, it could be natural, and it's been aligned so well. Whatever we can say about natural, you're saying, well, we can say the same thing about polytheism. But it's almost like that example with the gardener, that what's the difference between these gods and a God that doesn't exist? If we seem to have gotten to that point, because you've just constantly just say, every time I think Skylar, myself, or even Steve has said, well, couldn't this come through? And you agree, yes, it could. But then you try to, I don't know how you're shifting it back to saying that's proof from my God.
I'm not saying it's proof. I'm saying it could be either way.
But then then we can just do that with anything.
For me,
I can do that with, I can put any explanation forward that has some support, in the same way, and they could be true. For instance, all these other religions other religions could be true. You said earlier.
I'm a polytheist, so it's totally possible.
Any polytheistic religion, there could be some monotheistic religions that could be true. All of them could be true together.
Like I said earlier, I don't necessarily reject the Christian God. I think that it's maybe not as described.
If there's no distinction between it existing, then you're saying the more reasonable position to take is that it does?
I don't see how you're saying the more reasonable position is that it doesn't.
Well, you're saying there's almost
right.
no if it's indistinguishable from it not existing and it existing, I would suspect the more reasonable position to say, well, until we have some evidence to show that it exists, then we're going to hold the position it doesn't.
We were just talking about
if they're indistinguishable.
We've been talking for the past hour about the evidence that it exists. It's just that evidence that exists, that people claiming, hey, yes, there is something that is external to me that I'm experiencing, can then be twisted by the naturalist into saying that no, it's in fact this other thing.
Well, but how you evaluate.
You're saying I'm going to take what is described, say that it's something else, and run with it, and I'm going to say that's the more rational position. That's
no. I am saying that I don't know. You're saying you know.
I'm not saying that.
Hold on.
Both taking the position that we don't know.
You're saying you know, and it could be this explanation.
That's not straw manning again. I am not saying that I know.
All right. So exactly. So we don't know. So it could be anything.
Sure.
It could be anything. So it's indistinguishable. So what you're saying is it could be anything. You're not even putting forth a polytheistic argument. You're just saying it could be anything. And I'm saying, okay, well, how do you define?
You're trying to get into
the polytheistic argument makes any sense.
Here's the dishonest tactic that you're doing.
Is anything. So
what you're doing is completely fucking dishonest. I need to call you out on it because this is crap.
Or it can't be anything.
You're saying that now you're trying to influence this with an epistemic claim, and that's crap.
Yeah,
to bring that in. Because one of us doesn't know, that doesn't mean shit. You're using words like prove and know and all that kind of stuff. We're talking about an argument of whether or not it's rational.
Prove and know out of it. I'm trying to understand, how is this distinguishable from not existing at all? And then you've brought up all these different things, and then anytime someone pushes you and says, okay, well, how does this have to do with polytheistic gods? How does this even show? How does this even have any support for what you're saying? You're saying, well, it really doesn't, because it could be natural, it could be this, it could be anything. And I'm saying, well, if you're telling me it could be anything, then you're not making an argument for polytheism. You've made a great argument for anything, but I've heard nothing that really links to any of these things.
No, the argument for polytheism is that we're dealing with entities.
That it could be anything.
That people that are describing spiritual experiences are in fact dealing with something external.
Yeah, I get that. I think the question, Ocean, I think the question is, and I totally get what you're saying, Ocean, but what I think the question is what is it about these external experiences that you are relating as the Norse gods being the explanation for?
Getting into the specificity of saying, hey, this is the Norse gods, is a bet that one takes as a polytheist to say that these are these archetypes are similar to the experiences that I'm having. The experiences described by people in these texts are similar to the experiences that I'm describing.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay,
and then therefore, I'm going to say I'm going to worship in the same way that those before me have worshipped these feelings, these experiences.
All right, but so you haven't seen people in other pantheons have those same experiences, or is that why you?
Yeah, there's different conversations as to whether or not Odin may be Hermes, as far as like those experiences being the same appearance in a different culture, or that they're in fact just similar entities that are.
But you do it. Okay, I get that. So but you do acknowledge that because people have had similar experiences, like we were in the live chat just talking about why is it light switches don't work on lucid dreams for the most part. Vast majority of people have that similar experience. It's very odd, but it's culturally, where we have electricity. I mean, somebody who doesn't have electricity probably doesn't have that issue, but for people that live in places with light switches, it seems almost ubiquitous that if you have a lucid dream and you try to turn a light switch, it's not going to work. I don't know why. I mean, there has to be some reason for that. Now, you're saying because you've experienced these situations, you think culturally you're attributing to a Nordic god system or pantheon, but could it possibly be that just because we have this civilization where we have light switches, we're experiencing something where it's just a cultural thing? It doesn't necessarily have to be attributed to some higher power. And maybe the cultures back then, they obviously didn't realize that. So they wanted to give it an attribution, and they just call that a god.
Give what an attribution?
Their experiences.
Sure. That seems to be accepting them as described.
Yeah, that's where I don't know. Well, I'm more likely to believe that they just named these experiences, or named a god that gave them these experiences, rather than actually being anything.
Are you saying that the name Odin is given by humans rather than given by Odin?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's plausible as well.
Yeah, because I believe they have experiences. I mean, that's the key thing. The people that say, "Oh, well, these people didn't experience anything," or would even say, "Well, lucid dreaming doesn't exist," I just discount those people outright. I mean, I totally believe most people that tell me that
it's easy to do that when you've had the experience. But like, let's just take lucid dreaming for example, and let's say that you want to demonstrate to somebody else that lucid dreaming is real, like that it happens, right? You wouldn't be able to do it.
I could kind of show them the mechanism and try to get them to self-induce it.
I could.
Like get them to self-induce it. But if they failed over and over,
to do it.
I mean, the funny part about my dreams is whenever something misfortunate or unfortunate happens in my dreams, all of a sudden it becomes lucid, and I just say, "Fuck that! I want happy."
No, I'm not kidding. In lucid dreaming, I actually did the research. All you have to do is occasionally think, "I want to fly," and in your dream you will.
No, I know how to help people get lucid dreams, but Ocean's right. If the person never experiences it, then you can never ever get them to be convinced of it.
They can argue with you and say you're just making it up.
Right. But there are common things, like, for example, we all accept that people have dreams, right? I've never had anybody say, "Oh, dreams don't exist."
Sure.
Right? Because that's a common thing that I think everybody on the planet who's ever lived probably has experienced dreams. And you may not remember them, but at some point they've had a dream where they can go, "Yeah, I've dreamt." Now, it's only, I think, about 6% of the population that tends to have lucid dreams often. It's not a huge amount. It's like 6 to 9%, if I remember the number. But
that's actually much larger than I thought it would be.
Yeah, well, that's 6% isn't really, well, not really.
It's bigger than I thought it would be. I thought it would be like 1 part in 1,000 rather than 1 part or 6 parts in 100.
Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. But you're right. It's hard to explain to them. But I think that most normal people that I have a good rapport with, if they tell me they've had some kind of experience, no matter how strange it seems, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they've experienced something. Does that make sense? I mean, even if you say, "Look, I really believe that I was abducted by aliens," and let me tell you why. And there's a reasonable story behind it. I'm going to think that you think that you got abducted by aliens. I'm not going to believe that you did, because I don't think we've ever been visited. And I think there's probably a different explanation, such as lucid dreaming. But I would not say that, "Oh, well, you're just making the entire story up." That's not how I work.
We're talking about weird stuff now, guys.
Yeah, speaking of period, we start talking about weird stuff, and you show me.
Speaking of somebody weird.
Yeah, you jumped in at the lucid dreaming alien abduction part of our conversation.
Yeah, no doubt, right?
I've actually been listening for a while.
For an hour now, though.
Yeah, you're a stalker. Hey, Kay, have you read Skylar fiction yet?
No, I sure haven't.
Skylar, you there? Are you still 5 beers in or something?
I'm listening. I'm here.
Okay.
What's up?
Nice,
meet
nice
Ken.
to meet you, Skylar.
He's your worst theist nightmare.
The worst theist nightmare. Run theist now before it's too late.
Nice to meet you, man.
Nice meeting you, man.
So how you been, Ken? You been hanging in there? I know you've been busy with RTB and other stuff, so you've been on the road a lot or something, right?
Yeah. I've been down in LA last week, and just trying to get stuff back together this week. So,
well, I might have two physicists coming in next month. One of them's named Gary Loche. He actually had really kind words for reasons to believe. He's well familiar with them. He's a Christian, so I don't know if you might know
cool.
that name. But yeah,
rings a bell. Yeah.
Yeah, he wrote the article that's on Talk Origin against Humphrey's helium diffusion rates.
Oh,
so he's a really big
rate project.
Yeah, he worried the rate project, and I read his paper that General Han Solo had sent me before, and I reread it again, and I got a much better understanding of it now. But he and Dr. Henke, who also wrote on Talk Origin, they are willing to come in and talk to us and try to explain to us in a basic way what the argument really is. But he's Christian. He was worried that he didn't want Christianity to be put in a bad light. And I said, hey, look, we had a great rapport with reasons to believe. Contact Anastasia, their secretary. She can tell you that. And he's like, no, I've watched some of the videos. They're very good. And so that was cool.
Oh, yeah. I'd love to join. That'd be cool to interact with him.
Yeah. Skylar, Kenny's a PhD in theology, but a legit one. That's what he's really worst nightmare.
Excellent.
He's not like he didn't get it from like Patriot University. He actually went to school.
Now, are you a Christian also, Kenny?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm
actually Ken or Kenny. I'm sorry.
Kenny usually.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm actually a pastor as well.
It's actually
go ahead, Father. Yeah, Kylo Ken.
All right. You know what? I actually have a question for the Christians today. I was actually thinking about this earlier, and you can answer. Another Christian can answer. But I was going over the old story of Sodom and Gomorrah from the Old Testament, right?
Uh-huh.
And from what I understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Lot was considered a very righteous man. He was I think the only righteous man in that community, if I'm correct. Is that correct?
A
Yeah,
lot
in
in
a
the Bible?
relative sense, for sure.
Yeah, Lot from
his daughters weren't very good, were they?
Well, hold on. Let me get into this. So because I believe at one point there's a couple things I have questions about, right? So Lot, this righteous man, if I recall from the story, the angels come to visit him in there, and basically a big crowd forms outside of the door of his house. And I guess they want to rape the angels, as far as I understand from the story. And basically, Lot offers his own daughters instead of the angels to get raped. And I guess I'm trying to kind of figure out why the man who's righteous would offer his own children to be raped instead of the angels.
Hospitality is an unbelievably important thing in Eastern culture. And so those men coming into the protection of his household would, anything that would have happened to him, believe it or not, would have been to them, believe it or not, would have been more disgraceful than anything happening to his daughters.
Now, but rape is immoral under Christian theology, correct?
Sure, yeah.
So somebody who's righteous can offer something that is sinful to people.
I would say that the understanding of Lot's righteousness in that context would need to be paralleled with Abraham's righteousness, which says that he believed God and it was credited to him as righteousness. So I would say that that was a position by which he was righteous in the eyes of God based on faith alone and not by his conduct.
So faith is more important than not allowing your daughters to be raped, basically?
If you want to, go that way and try to pick out some of the cultural situations that we don't quite understand, yeah, it's definitely immoral. But again, it's even today in the Eastern culture, hospitality is of utmost importance, and it's a horrible thing that he offered his daughters. But again, during that culture, daughters weren't worth anything anyway.
So you would admit that it was immoral for him to offer his daughters?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. I was always under the impression that, like, it was one or the other. It's not like he had a choice. It's not like, oh, well, if he just said, okay, no, don't rape the angels and don't rape the daughters, okay, that's good. I think that the crowd was going to rape somebody either way.
But God didn't tell him to do either one, right? God didn't.
No, God didn't say it
God's
at
not
all.
involved in this.
God's not in this.
God could have sat back and said, you know what, both these choices are immoral.
Well, God was already in the story, just in the prior chapter. Like Abraham was basically debating with God on the righteousness of the city, and obviously God, had the upper hand in that discussion. And not only that, but he conveniently superseded the ancient Near Eastern context by basically blinding the men outside and not allowing the daughters to actually experience that.
But also, though, the angels, even though there was no choice, like it was either or, right? Like angels can not get raped if they don't want to get raped. They have that power and that ability. So it even makes it more kind of peculiar that Lot would offer his own daughters to get raped when angels can definitely defend themselves, I would imagine, at that point. Not a background. I don't know if someone said background was going on. I think it might be Ken. You have a lot of background.
Is that?
I think it's Ken's. Ken, you might want to mute when you're not speaking because you can hear a lot.
Oh, yes.
Yes. No, it's okay.
Sorry, guys.
He got some chicks over there.
Oh, I've got a gaggle of chicks in the kitchen.
Having a party.
Okay, so we were saying that basically, so these angels could have, stopped these guys from raping them. There was no need for Lot to really offer his daughters to be raped. But even I want to touch on a point.
Lot is just emphasizing an ancient Near Eastern custom. That's it. That's the end of that. Hold
on, Steve, hold on. So when you say emphasizing age, like we're talking about being gracious to guests, right? Is what you're talking about? Like what he? Okay. So why would being gracious to somebody be more important than not having your daughters raped?
Again, in Lot's thinking, in an ancient Near Eastern custom context, that's what he believes.
Sure, but all those beliefs come from their God. Right, the Jewish culture,
no, they don't. Absolutely no.
Okay, so Hebrew culture, the Hebrew culture, right, that God was in communication with in the Old Testament. Their whole society, through Leviticus and Deuteronomy and the laws that they were given, weren't given to them by God.
No, they weren't.
They weren't. Who were they? Okay, who were they given them by? They just came up with them.
It was a borrowing from the Hittite laws and the Middle Assyrian laws, and on it goes.
Okay, where did those come from?
What he does is he carefully modifies and fine-tunes particular laws that actually function for a higher good at the end of the day. But then, as you keep reading through the biblical narrative, God's actually frustrated with that old covenant, and that's why the emergence of the new covenant under Jesus, which will not be borrowed from man-made laws, is his desire, and that's what happens in the New Testament.
So God would disagree with Lot's decision to allow his daughters to be raped.
Yes,
absolutely, yeah.
But he's still a righteous man,
based on faith.
Now, where would I get the scripture for that to back that up? That when we
Genesis
talk about
15.
What is that?
Abraham believed God, and he was credited to him as righteousness.
Yeah,
Genesis 15. What's the verse? So I can look it up real quick. What's the verse? Genesis 15. What?
Oh, I'm going off of top of my head.
What is it? I know you said off the top of your head. What was the other one?
Let me just see.
Yeah, somebody.
Well,
It's
yeah, when
either,
somebody has it, let me
either
know.
chapter
6.
12 or chapter 15.
This is 15 verse 6. Yeah.
15 verse 6. Okay. So when God says somebody is righteous, it basically means that they just have faith in him.
No.
The New Testament. Oh, go ahead, Father.
You said Genesis 15:6. You said.
Yeah. So the entire chapter of Genesis 15, when you actually read the chapter, there's a vassal treaty that God does with Abraham. Again, you have to remember these people are engraved. Their thinking process are literally infested with this ancient Near Eastern perspectives of life. So God goes about by basically doing a vassal treaty covenant with Abraham by, as you can see in verse 10.
Mm-hmm.
So Abraham brought him all these animals and cut each of them in half down the middle, placing the pieces and so on. Mm-hmm. So then just prior, when it says verse 6, Abraham believed the Lord and it was credited to him as righteousness. So what Yahweh is doing is that you're having a loyalty oath. You're joining in with who I am relative to the other gods. And I think Ocean and I, this is where we agree that the other gods do legitimately exist. But Abraham's decided to align himself with Yahweh. But simultaneously, Yahweh has to accommodate the psychology and the perspectives of Abraham's worldview and slowly reform his thinking over time, including, in this case, the people of Israel, right up until the time of Jesus.
Why? Why does he need to do it that way? Why does he need to reform it that? Why can't God just be straightforward with Abraham and say, this is what I want you to do, this is what you're not allowed to do? I'm God.
But that's what he does.
Well, then
that's exactly what he does.
Now you're saying something different now. Because now you're just saying God commanded it. Yes, you are. Because you're saying that he had to persuade him in basically a sense.
No, it's not.
That he had to do it through these. Hold on. You had to do it through certain
means. He demands
means.
certain things on the get-go, and that basically evolves a sort of human ethic that you see throughout human history.
Okay. So did he command these people to do it, or did he persuade them?
He commanded things to happen. There wouldn't be any form of persuasion, but through his commandments, he utilizes certain tenets of what they already had, vestiges of their perspectives of life.
And he commanded that rape was wrong.
Modifies them a little bit to bring about.
No, I think you're confused. And we're talking about Abraham right now, not Lot.
No,
God
I'm just
did
asking.
not command that Lot give his daughters.
No, that's fine. I'm just asking. Did God command his people, in general, that rape was wrong?
Yes.
Of course, rape is wrong.
So what Lot did, he didn't listen to God.
I don't know that Lot is about 400 years before the Mosaic Law.
Is Lot 400 years before the Mosaic? How do we get to that number?
Because of
God himself says that
chronology.
400 years haven't transformed.
That was before they went to Egypt, and then they were in Egypt for 400 years.
Fine. So I'm sorry. What kind of law did they live under before the Abrahamic law, when God was communicating with these people?
None.
Any of the best. Well, I would say any of the vestiges of Sumerian ethic and so on.
Okay. So what was God doing? So was God communicating with these? So how did God have any relationship with Lot if there was no law, there was no nothing?
Okay, Skylar, let's put it this way. Let's put it this way. You have 3 different falls taking place in Genesis. You have Genesis 3 fall, then you have a Genesis 6 fall, and then you have Genesis 11 with the Tower of Babel.
Mm-hmm.
By the time the Tower of Babel happens, no human is worshipping Yahweh. Every human is basically worshipping a false deity, and in this case, aligning themselves with horrible perspectives of life.
Okay, who is Yahweh?
When God chooses, one second.
It doesn't make any sense what you're saying to me. Because
No, 1 second. This is the context. When God chooses Abraham, basically he's entering into an environment where his own human images are practically not aligning with what he envisioned initially at the creation. So he's already taking sick people, in this case starting with Abraham, a pagan, and working, an evolution through a particular group of people, which ultimately is the Israelites, to bring about, in this case, the salvation of all humans and all the nations under the commandments of Jesus and Jesus's way of life and all that.
So you use the word evolution again, and evolution is not the same as command. You're not just commanding people not to do something. Secondly, what communication did God have with these people? How would they even know about him? Is he communicating with them?
He's tangibly appearing to them and talking to them.
Okay, so Lot, he had appeared to Lot and talked to him.
No.
The angels did.
The angels did. Okay.
Now,
did those angels communicate what was right or wrong to Lot? How would Lot have any sense of morality? How would he know what right or wrong was?
By his conscience.
Okay, how would he know that his conscience was related to God?
Well, I wouldn't suggest that Lot had much divine knowledge at that point. You know, I'd like to point out something here. You're asking questions about stuff that it seems like you haven't spent the time to actually understand what the
okay, this isn't the way to go. This isn't the way to go with me.
No, I'm serious.
No, well, dude, I studied theology. I actually was going to be a preacher and all these kind of things.
Well, the question you're asking.
Well, no. Just because the problem is you're trying to make a statement like I don't know Christianity because it disagrees with your interpretation of it.
No, what I'm saying is the questions you're asking either means that you're trying to be ornery or you don't understand.
No, I'm trying to get you guys to give me an answer, but you're not giving me an answer. You're just going to trying to attack my perspective on Christianity.
The answers I'm giving
instead of answering the question, what you're doing is attacking my perspective and understanding of Christianity. Is what you're doing.
No, you're asking.
Why not just answer the question directly?
Questions.
Oh, it's a silly question. But
we have been.
If the answers to the questions are kind of duh answers that would be understandable from a Christian's perspective, then as a Christian, just answer the damn question.
We have been.
Okay, well, so then answer me. So who communicated the moral law to Lot? If the moral laws you were basically articulating didn't come out till later on, how did he have any sense of morality? Now you said conscious. Well, how would he equate that his conscience was connected to God?
Nobody's saying.
I would argue that. Well, I would argue that Genesis 14, the chronology of Abraham's walk with God starts in Genesis 12. Lot is the nephew to Abraham. Mm-hmm. You have a peculiar interaction with Melchizedek in Genesis 14. Abraham has to save Lot. And so therefore, in that context, there could be a sort of like an overlap. But I wouldn't say that Lot is a well-grounded Yahweh worshiper, if that makes any sense.
How he understands the theology. That God claims that he's a righteous man because of his faith. How are you going to say he's not a grounded worshiper of him?
Well, he's righteous in what context?
Because
where does the word righteous?
I don't understand what that.
No. We were talking about righteousness in regards to Abraham's loyalty to Yahweh, but Lot's righteousness with respect to what context in what chapter?
Okay, what are you saying that the word righteousness means when in context of Lot?
So, for example,
I'm bringing Hebrews 11 into this that seems to indicate that Abraham shared with his nephew a little bit of the divine covenant, and Lot was a believer in Yahweh in probably a very superficial sense, but he was in agreement with the revelation that Yahweh gave to his uncle concerning the land promise, concerning what God told Abraham in Genesis chapter 12.
Now, I'm pretty sure just a couple of minutes ago, you guys just said that Lot and Abraham were completely different times as an argument.
No, we didn't. Abraham was 400 years before the law as well.
Okay, so there was a... Okay, so what morality are you talking about? The moral law that came out 400 years later? What are you talking about? What moral law are you referring to?
There's a covenant and there's a law. Somebody else jump in here.
I was just going to say there's two things to consider here. One is, the scriptures clearly say that even the Gentiles know the moral law. So you don't have to necessarily have direct contact with God. But, whenever it's talking about faith, it's talking about obedience to God. And that's what it's talking about. Sure. So Lot may have made mistakes. Abraham may have made mistakes because you know, like you said, they didn't know the law, but they obeyed God whenever God commanded him to do things. And that, in that sense, that's why he's
man in the sense
righteous.
that God knows what's in your heart. And
Yeah,
I mean, I'm a good person. God would probably think I'm a righteous man.
But by that definition, then God's conscience told Lot that his conscience told him that it would be better to have the angels rape his daughters than to have his guest hurt.
No, it was cultural pressures.
Yeah, I can definitely see it more of a cultural thing. I don't think God. If you have a decent heart, but that doesn't mean you're going to make the right decisions. Obviously, we have a conscience, but some people, especially when you have cultural pressures, might make bad decisions.
But we're pretending like God didn't have any effect on the Hebrew culture right now, as if like they took all their culture from something else, and then God was just this kind of fucking side thing. That was
you have to remember that Abraham was the first revelation of God in Hebrew. You know, Father Abraham. He was the very first person in the Hebrew culture. Before that, like his father, I think, actually made like statues to polytheistic gods. Is that correct?
Yeah, even Abraham was a pagan up until God called him out of the land of Ur. It seems like Skylar, you've got about 400 years of culture separated in your question. You're thinking the Mosaic law has somehow informed Abraham and Lot how to live, but God hasn't given the Mosaic law for another 400 years.
No, what I'm saying is God has given them the law on their own. So God
not until 400 years later.
So God just sat back and let them do whatever they wanted, basically. For
Abraham and Lot were not Hebrews.
Okay, that's fine. But so God just let these people do whatever they want for 400 years without any interference.
He let them do whatever they want for a long time.
Okay, well, what sense does that make? Like, this is a God that has a relationship.
I don't know
well, we're talking
what's
about
your point, though.
My point is that you start in the Bible with God having a relationship with Adam and Eve, and literally talking to them, interacting with them, and then all of a sudden we have this gap for 400 years, apparently, where then we start going.
No, it's longer than that.
Okay, longer. You're only proving my point further. It doesn't help your argument.
Yeah,
Adam and Eve.
Now you're trying to argue that God just sat back for all this time after Adam and Eve and said, "Hey, let your cultures develop, do whatever the fuck you want. I'll come around when Abraham gets here, and then I'll give you a law to follow."
What if he did?
What
if he did? What's your point?
Is that what you're arguing? Is that your case? Is that what?
No, I just.
So what's the distinction? What's the distinction in what you're arguing then? How did I not frame it correctly?
Well, human beings fell. Adam and Eve, probably about 100,000 years ago, something like that.
Sure.
Then you've got the fall. God left human beings to their own. He did have prophets here and there. But we find by the time of Abraham, which is after the Tower of Babel, we're talking about 2000 BC, thereabouts 2100 BC. So you've got thousands of years from the time of Abraham, or I'm sorry, from the time of Adam to Abraham, and now you have God initiating the plan of redemption by calling Abraham from a pagan culture. And then you've got his descendants going down to Egypt for 400 years.
My assessment's not
Moses
incorrect.
comes along.
Now you're going into stuff afterwards. So my assessment wasn't incorrect.
No, I'm trying to figure out what your point is. Are you trying to
first I need to establish
what first of all, God because of his.
I need to establish what your views are first. That way I can understand what you believe. So I'm trying to understand the timeline of what you're saying. So now you do agree with what I said, that basically for a long period of time, God wasn't involved.
I don't think we can say.
Well, he had his prophets here and there. He had his prophets here and there, of course.
He's intimately involved for the last 3.8 billion years of evolutionary life and natural history.
Okay, well, you're saying something now different than what the other gentleman was saying. So
what I'm saying is that he let the cultures evolve.
And I'm not talking about how he created it in that sense of involvement. I'm talking about the involvement in having communication with his beings.
Yeah.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying, General. What you're saying, yeah, he was involved in a sense of creating it and things like that. What I'm saying is that Communication was with Adam and Eve. Thousands, whatever, hundreds, thousands, whatever you want to say, years go by. Next person he communicates with, besides a couple prophets, is Abraham.
Yeah, and just look at migration patterns of humans and look at what they used to do, what they used to practice, the type of technology they would produce. I mean, anthropologists realize, and we can match this with the Genesis story, that you're starting with a primitive context of the Homo sapien, that by the time Genesis 2 takes place, which I believe is roughly 70,000 years ago in the Persian Gulf area, you have then God tabernacling for the first time with this particular species and engaging with them. And in this case, this would be the human population along with Adam and Eve. Then 14,000 years ago, you have Noah's flood. So a long period of time transitions between Adam and Eve and Noah. And then Babel would be roughly maybe 8,000 BC.
Sure,
around
not
that.
disagreeing with any of that, though. What I'm talking about is communication, and when he was communicating with people. So was he communicating with people and talking to people like Lot and talking to this ancient Hebrew culture between Adam and Eve and Abraham?
Sure, but the details are missing in that context.
Well, how would we know that he's communicating with these people if you're saying the details are missing?
No, I'm talking about minute details. So the Genesis narrative, whenever it wants to jump to the next main event, it does summarize in between the two events what's taking place. So, for example, genealogies highlight this fact.
Sure. I mean, yeah, it gives you a list of who this person begot, this person, this person begot this person, but that's not the same thing.
But each person's name, but notice each person's name has a theological value to it. That's the reason why they're like summarized in that context.
Sure, but that doesn't do anything to what I'm making a point of. God wants people to follow a certain behavior.
To a Jew the first thing Jews do is look at genealogy. So that's literally in their mind. They're like, yeah, God was doing this to this person,
Sure.
but the finite detail of each person's story, life story, is not there. I mean, there's not enough room to put the amount of content that would be there in 70,000 years of human history.
Yes. So what I'm getting at, I'm going to say it again, is so how did people from between Adam and Eve and Abraham understand what God wanted from them?
I would suggest that in the fact that we have God instructing Adam and Eve about sacrifice, that there would be a deposit, that there would be a deposit of oral tradition, which I believe history bears out in a lot of ways. You've got sacrifice, blood sacrifice being practiced in all of the ancient cultures. I believe that there would have been a core of oral tradition that was passed down, intermittent with prophets from time to time. And I think the only way to prove that is just looking at all the cultures and how there is a basic idea of atonement through blood sacrifice, the sense that man is at odds with the gods or the gods, and that man is seeking fellowship back with his creator.
But the only thing you get from Genesis on a theological aspect is, first of all, obey God, listen to God, because if you don't, you see the repercussions, and blood sacrifice. So I'm trying to understand how between those two things, and that's pretty much it, that's the example you used, how would I know what God wants me to do besides sacrificing animals, which is strange why God would need a blood sacrifice in order to feel better or whatever you want to call it, to feel worshipped.
Well, let me give you some fascinating facts that's drawn out in a book called Eternity in Their Hearts, where the study of these ancient cultures was done, and they had their pagan practices, but there was also deep in the history of the culture the idea of the creator God. And you have this with the Greeks, with the altar of the unknown God. There's a story about Epimenides, or I don't think it was Epimenides or Epicurus. I can't remember off the top of my head. In 600 BC, you have God intervening in the Greek culture. There's evidence within South America of a core of revelation given, and I would say that there's a significant amount that can be discerned about God through the very fact that creation is there that bears witness concerning his nature and his attributes. And so you'll find that even in some of these ancient cultures that had no connection with the West, or I should say the East, I think it's down by the Incas, I forget the exact tribe, but they had very ancient writings that very much sounded like the Psalms in the worship that they offered to the Creator God. So I would say, even talking to a Hmong Chinese friend of mine and his culture, there's a sense in where you had the pagan gods that were worshipped, but then in the back of the culture's mind and memory, there was the evidence that there was a creator God. And when one would call on that creator God, I believe God would respond positively and give that individual information that what you would call special revelation. And I think the history of the world bears this out.
So there's a lot of traditions, the creator God's kind of a dick. And I don't know what you're talking about in relation to the Greek, or really.
I'm talking about in 600 BC. There was a plague that hit the city, and they called, I think it was Epimenides the Crete, or I don't think it was Epicurus. I can't remember exactly his name, but everybody was dying of the plague. He came over. Make a long story short, they sacrificed these lambs. Epicurus or Epimenides told them exactly what to do. Take these choice lambs, the one that would lay down in the middle of the morning that the creator God would pick out. And that's how they came up with the altar to an unknown God that was there and preached in Paul's time. And that's his dealing with the Greek culture.
So when you look at, okay, so let's keep with this. Let's keep with Lot, right? And the story of the story of Lot.
Yeah, if you want to take the conversation in a different direction, I could challenge him more on that. But
well, go ahead. I go ahead and challenge.
I actually wanted to show Skylar this quickly first before you go back to Lot again.
Well,
if that's all right.
Well, yeah, show it. Go ahead.
So I shared this on my Facebook. This is part of my Ephesians study, and in fact, last night in my study group, we were going through exactly this question, ironically enough. And I wanted to show the group that, in essence, humans have this desire to ask the why questions. We're sentient beings, and so here you have early philosophers. In this case, you could say they're Christian philosophers as well, and Jewish philosophers that basically answer the question in this way. That so, for example, in the Wisdom of Solomon, regardless of ancient Near Eastern customs and laws that God provides and so on, the real essence of what it means to be alive and to do your thing in life is, as you can see here, in God's hands, as are our words, all our reasoning and all our practical knowledge. And he's given me accurate knowledge of all, that is, how the world is made, how it holds together, the forces at work. This is in the Wisdom of Solomon. And then you have Severian, a 4th century bishop, say that the image, in this case he's saying a human being who's in the image of God, has come into the world and investigates nature. He looks for plants, finds them, investigating their roots, he understands, he becomes an artisan, so he's like an artist and the inventor of all things. And so in relation to your question in regards to, those thousands of years, God's interaction with these people, I would argue that these people were allowed to live their lives as images of the Logos. And so God doesn't have to constantly, in this case, be there standing next to them, giving them discourses of what to do. I think these humans were doing their own thing, living out their lives, echoing the Imago Dei that they were made in.
But they seem to never.
That's in a nutshell the best I can explain it to you.
I mean, but the problem is they never actually do it in the Old Testament. They don't live up to any kind of kind of good quality thing. I mean, the guy offers his daughters for rape. I mean, you even look at the story and you look at the situation where, because I believe it was Lot, and correct me if I'm wrong, he was actually having almost arguing with God, like, hey, if I could say if there were 5 good people in the city. And I think he goes down to like, hey, all the way to the point where it's like, if there was 1 person, I wouldn't destroy the city. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That would be Abraham. Yeah.
That was Abraham. Okay, yeah, because Abraham went to the city. Okay, yeah. Okay, so what you're telling, were there any children in the city?
Oh, I'm sure there were.
Sure, so none of those children were worthy of being saved. There wasn't 1 good person, God said, so a child wouldn't be considered good in order to be saved.
Hey, dude, these emotional questions that get me just as much as they will anybody.
No. Don't pull that shit.
No, I feel the power of that stuff.
No. You don't try to make it like an emotional argument. All right, just answer the. If you don't have an answer, just say I don't know. That's fair enough.
No, it is an emotional argument.
No, it's not even necessarily even an emotional argument, because unless they're going to talk
God killed all the little kids.
No. Because it's not about emotion. What I'm trying to do is get you to admit that children aren't innocent. And unless you're going to say that children are guilty somehow in this argument of something, that's what you have to say. It's not about killing them. I'm not even getting to the idea of killing them. What I'm trying to make a point is God says that there are no innocent people, that if there was 1 righteous or good person in this place, he wouldn't kill them. And now you have to argue, because you say that kids wouldn't be worthy of saving.
No, I don't have to say that. All I said was I get the power of that argument, bringing out the emotion. It's a great
you don't have an
debate
answer.
tactic.
That's all I'm asking. Do you have an answer or no? If you don't have an answer,
do I have an answer? Yes, I have an answer, in the sense that those kids would grow up to be just as wicked as their parents.
So it's actions they didn't commit. So they committed no action that was wicked. So they were so God doesn't look at the moment. He's looking at what could come in the future, is the argument. So basically the ends justify the means.
Well, one second. First and foremost, were they warned?
Listen, if you're talking about children, what is a 4-year-old going to do, bro?
No. Again, we're talking about mature thinking adults here.
No, we're not. We're not, actually. We're talking about children. We're talking about 4-year-olds. So we're talking about. No, I wasn't. I said child.
Of the parents.
No.
In that culture.
I'm sorry. Are my parents responsible for my actions?
Yeah, if you're 4 years old.
So you're saying that because my 4-year-old does something, that's my fault, even if I wasn't around?
No. I thought you meant that if you're under subjugation of your parents at that age.
You're skipping the point. So I want you to say, you're saying that a child, a 4-year-old, isn't worthy of saving in this story.
No, I would argue that the child is worth saving.
But God said something different in the text.
Skylar, you said that
God. Where does God say something different?
They're having an argument between Lot. If there was 1 person worthy of saving, that he wouldn't destroy the city.
Children aren't people, apparently.
Yeah, so the child isn't worthy of saving.
He doesn't say person, he says man.
Oh my God, you're gonna really play semantics as if they're talking about man as if an adult.
No, I'm serious.
Okay, so if there was one, so basically you're going to punish children for what the adults do. You're going to harm children.
Hey, if you go and drink it, if you go,
he's gonna punish. It says here, I will bring destruction upon the city in regards to the way that cities function.
The sad thing is that
it's a collective whole.
The sad thing is that children suffer because of their parents' decisions many times.
Sure,
and that's a sad reality of life.
But that has nothing to do with God in that context. Yes, kids do suffer all the time because drug addict parents treat their children terrible and stuff like that. Absolutely, it has nothing to do with God.
This discussion will be fruitful if we can actually hear each other out. So what we have is Abraham having a discussion with God. in the prior chapter. Then we have Lot in the very next chapter screaming and crying to, the people of the city to run away and to save themselves, but no one would listen to him. Then you have the people of the city doing grotesque things. In this case, they're wanting to rape the guests of Lot's house. So the depravity of that city is well understood. And furthermore, I wouldn't make the argument that this is a supernatural destruction. I would argue that this is completely natural within the vicinity of that area. So it was a natural disaster. It's kind of like the Japanese tsunami. It's unfortunate that children were included in that tsunami, but that's the point. In this natural disaster, God brings about a particular judgment on that people group.
But God caused that natural disaster, correct?
No, he didn't. It was a natural disaster.
So good things can happen.
It was just the laws of physics doing its thing.
Yeah, but God knew there would be a disaster. He knew this would happen to those people.
Yes, but that's why the warning was there.
Because when he created the world in the beginning, all these things would happen as follows because of the way he created it.
Right.
That goes more to the problem of evil than it does.
Yeah, and just to go back, because it was taught, I believe the word was righteous that we were using if there was one other righteous person in the city, right? And we used the idea of faith when you guys were arguing what righteousness meant, is that they had faith in God and he trusted God. And then Jesus later on refers to children and the innocence later of how children have natural faith.
Right.
So are you saying these children they weren't righteous, these children?
I'm pretty sure that those children in Sodom and Gomorrah taken over in that natural disaster would be saved.
It's not, no. I'm not talking about salvation. I'm not talking about heaven or hell. We're talking about specifically the argument Lot had with God, or the disagreement, where they count down if there was this many righteous people. If there was one righteous person, would you save it? Two righteous people, and we get down all the way to one, right? And you guys defined righteousness earlier as being faith in God and trusting God. So you're telling me that these children didn't trust or have faith in God naturally.
Okay, so if God was going to save the city on the basis of righteous children in the city, well, he could have done that. But what would happen? Would that city actually become righteous?
No. That's not. No. That's a different argument. No. We're specifically.
No, I understand your argument.
We're not talking about the repercussions, like what could have happened. We're talking about what God was arguing with Lot, and the fact that God said that there was none that were righteous besides Lot. And then that logic, we have to argue that children in that context.
I'm gonna enter on the side of the Christians here for a second. So if we have a God that is all knowing, then he would know the answer to that. So he would then know also whether or not the children are going to grow up into being unrighteous people. At which point, God would be able to head off the issue. If someone brings up the point, it's like, oh, there's a bunch of children here. God's like, well, I know what's going to happen to them. They're going to turn into more of the same.
But you would agree with this, though, that God would have the ability to change that, to influence.
Of course,
children.
But that's not
absolutely.
What
yeah, sure.
Exactly.
But that's kind of like you have to add that layer in, right? Because that's
God could have created the world in such a way that was better. It had people better off, or put the tree of knowledge in a place that wasn't the Garden of Eden. I mean,
just taking all those children out of the city and just been like, you know what, you guys haven't done anything yet. I'm going to put you with some other group, and you'll be safe. Or hey, I'll just make y'all drop dead. We'll go to heaven.
Of whether or not God is actually a moral agent. When we're talking about a God of morality, or why is he a moral agent? And that's just like a whole nother fucking.
Sure, it's a whole nother thing you can go down.
That's a pot of death and destruction for Christians as well.
But I just want to say, we're using weird definitions of righteousness here, and that's what my main point is.
Righteousness is obedience to God, right? And then you have God demanding you to do strange shit.
Exactly.
I'm actually using the Protestant definition that is later developed in the New Testament, that righteousness is based on faith in the revelation of God.
But there is no revelation.
Al-Chihuahua would probably.
All right. Well, then at which point the children are not
context of Christianity.
Yeah, but there is no revelation at this point.
Not to those particular. Not to those particular children.
So you can't use the word righteous in that context, then.
No, I'm just clarifying what I was saying.
Sure. No. Yeah, but you're saying that this is the context of
even Lot is not righteous.
No. all I said that because Hebrews 11 calls Lot righteous, it means that he believed the content of the revelation that God gave his uncle Abraham. It had nothing to do with his.
But you said that.
I think you meant 2 Peter 2.
I didn't realize Lot was after Abraham. That's interesting.
Yeah, and you said that revelation. Yeah. You said that revelation hadn't come yet. That was the whole point I brought up earlier.
Skylar,
one
second.
The Abrahamic covenant is different than the Mosaic law.
Okay, so but the Mosaic law existed when Lot was in Sodom and Gomorrah?
No.
Okay. God damn it! I'm trying to follow you here. It's hard to follow.
I'm trying to follow you.
I believe the timeline is Lot, Abraham, then Moses.
Wait, can I?
Right? But hold on. The thing is,
am I wrong there? Hold on. Let's get this clear.
Yeah.
It's the timeline is Lot, Abraham, then Moses.
No. Well, Abraham and Lot were at the same time, and Lot was younger than Abraham.
Oh, I see. Okay, that's all I want to know.
These discussions are largely unprofitable.
I want to make sure.
Wait, can I just?
Are we at that point? We're having conversations with atheists, so therefore we shouldn't have the conversation.
1 second.
They're unprofitable.
Can I get Skylar's?
I don't give a shit. It's unprofitable. I
want to know what he means by that because I'm curious. What do you mean by it's not profitable?
Oh my goodness! Can I be heard?
So, hold on, General. I am saying that Skylar and I have been miscommunicating to one another, and I don't know the reason why. And therefore, it has become something that is not profitable.
No, what I'm at, you've told me different things. Okay.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, okay.
You've asked questions that may have confused me.
Let me just, if you're confused, I'm going to ask you very plainly. Okay. So, Lot didn't have the law.
No.
Yes or no?
No.
Okay.
He didn't have the Mosaic law, to be more specific.
He didn't have the Mosaic law. Okay, so what law are you referring to that he had?
I said the Abrahamic covenant that his uncle got. I'm simply inferring that why Scripture would call him righteous is because his uncle shared with him the plan of Yahweh, and Lot would have been in agreement in faith with Yahweh. That's all, and it's an inference.
Perfect. Okay, so what are you talking about that he shared with Abraham that Abraham told to Lot? What are you specifically talking about?
That Yahweh revealed his plan to make Abraham the father of a great nation.
Okay, so you're saying that happened before this. So that did happen before Lot, basically. So Abraham knew about his descendants.
No, it was with Lot. Genesis 12 specifically has Lot with Abraham when God was doing that.
Okay, perfect. That's what I'm just trying to understand here. Okay, so now we've established that. Okay, so you're saying basically that Lot's righteous because he just knows the plan that God gave to Abraham.
Again,
in the same way that Abraham believed God.
You guys can't do that. Like one of the
Go ahead, General. Go ahead, General.
And I think you guys believe different things is the problem. And that's where I think I'm getting confused. No, I do. I think you guys have said different contradictory things.
Not. There may be a slight minor nuance here and there, but we're largely in agreement.
Okay, so go ahead. One of you.
Can I ask Kenny a question real quick?
Yeah.
I just want to know. So you would say that Lot has the natural law, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Through conscience, being constituted.
Do you accept the natural law theory?
Oh yes, yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be part of where maybe Lot got some of his righteousness from as well.
Yeah, but that's what I was trying to get at with the Severan quote, that as an imager of the Logos, humans tend to be, through natural law, there's this notion of good and wrong, good and evil. In fact, to be more specific, Skylar, curiously in Genesis 2, Adam's actually described, well before the fall, Adam's described as having the Yetzer Hara, meaning he has both the good and evil inclination embedded in his psyche.
So if we describe righteousness as basically what it sounds like you are describing as knowledge, is what it sounds like, having knowledge of what God's plan is. So when you say God is righteous, what does that mean? In difference to the kind of righteousness we're using when we talk about law.
What? Sorry, I didn't get the question.
So if we describe Lot as being righteous because basically he has knowledge of what the plan was.
No, again, I would, to be more specific, when it says it was imputed to him as righteousness, I would argue it's to do with the fact that the treaty that was designed by God. So in the ancient Near East, when treaties were done, Abraham would make an oath and God would make an oath. It was like a two-way street. In this case, such treaties can actually fail because if you're talking about two finite creatures, in this case two fallible humans, making such a treaty, there's a chance that one of them will fail that oath, and so therefore God, being God, he's not going to fail. He understands the frailty of the human nature, and so he's like, no, it's all on me, and so therefore all I require is believing loyalty, and because Abraham decided to do that, the argument is that okay, then God imputes that as righteousness.
Okay, so loyalty is righteousness.
Yes.
Okay, so then what does righteousness mean when it says God is righteous?
Whatever God is, like
you're saying in the context that in a human to God, that's righteousness. That loyalty to God is righteousness, and then we say in the Bible that God is righteous. So then you can't have it seems like it'd be a weird definition to use that same definition in the context of when you say God is righteous.
Yeah, God's not moral in the same. God is, well, actually, morality doesn't really even apply to God.
No, yeah. I'm talking about righteousness.
So God is good, in himself. It's kind of like we have to get into more complex philosophy to talk about why God's good, but I mean, God is his own good because he's his own end, basically. He's what perfects himself. He's what he ultimately is directed towards naturally to his end, and that's part of natural law theory. That what we're directed towards by nature is what perfects us and what makes us good. And in obeying God, we're fulfilling our own nature, which is what God has created us as. God's created us with specific ends. And in that sense, we're good. And God's goodness is kind of the same sense, in that he's fulfilling his own ends.
So you seem to be equating righteousness with goodness.
Well, there's also
equating righteousness with something different.
Well, there's also a sense in which righteousness is used in a number of different ways. In the sense of being rightly related to God, human beings are called righteous. So that would be the kind of righteousness mentioned here in this sense, right relation to God.
Okay, so I don't know if that's how you guys are using it here when we're talking the context of Lot. How would Lot, well, you can't say that because God, Lot, as your own word said earlier, offered his daughters for rape, and that wasn't really necessarily moral. So he's not really
Yeah, but what I'm saying, I can be rightly related to God as a Christian and do some horrible things. So my conduct does not change my relationship.
I don't think so.
Absolutely not. But what I'm saying is, no, absolutely not. But I can be rightly related to God legally, positionally, which is the way the New Testament brings out righteousness in a forensic sense, in a legal declaration, which is the word righteousness or justification.
Yeah. What does that mean to be rightly related to God? I guess I should ask you that.
Well, to believe God's.
Just to believe in him.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole message of the Christian faith.
Basically defining righteousness as believing in God.
Absolutely.
Okay, so then you can't use that context of righteousness with describing God as righteous, because it would be a weird thing to say that believing God is righteous. That's what you're defining righteous as, and then
what I'm saying is,
so what is it?
It's used two different ways. No, it's used two different ways in reference to a human being's relationship to God, and then to say God is righteous. I don't want to get off into this whole issue, but it's to speak of him in an analogical sense. God doesn't have any accidental properties. There's nothing that can be added to the essence of God. So when we talk about God's righteousness, sometimes it's in reference to the fact that he does right things, as in Genesis, will not the judge of all the world do right? So theologically, this word functions in different ways throughout theology and progressive revelation.
But that word becomes meaningless because there's nothing wrong that God could do. Like when you say God does everything rightly, it doesn't mean anything because there's nothing wrong that God could do. His very being is by definition right or moral.
Well, again, we're getting off other theological worlds that I don't know that we even have time to run into at this point.
Okay.
So you want to know why God is good, basically?
No. I don't want to get into that whole moral argument. I mean, I can, but I'm not trying to.
It's almost inevitable.
Yeah, it is.
Is Ocean still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. It's getting to the point where
hey, I got.
Either you get into it or you have to let them use definitions in a way that's really strange.
I guess
in order to straighten it out, you have to iron it out. What's up, Ken?
Hey, I gotta run, guys. Dinner's been ready for about an hour for me. But Ocean, the story I gave about the Greeks, you'll find it in the Lives of the Eminent Philosophers, which is the Loeb Classical Library, translated by R.D. Hicks, and it's Diogenes, Lartius. What's that? It's Diogenes. Laertius.
All right, I'm looking.
And that's his account of what happened there in.
You said it's in the Loeb. You said
it's in the Loeb. He's a 3rd century Greek author.
Okay,
Diogenes Laertius, I believe it's. Yeah, but it's in that Loeb library, the Lives of the Eminent Philosophers. But I got to run, guys. Skylar, hey, if I misunderstood anything you said, or I apologize. I know we've talked past each other a few times, but
no, it was a pleasure talking to you. I appreciate it, and I know I can seem a little blunt sometimes. But I appreciate your answers and having the conversation. So thank you. I hope to speak to you.
Well, next time you got to let me have a couple beers with you because it seems like you're way ahead of me on the beer count.
Yeah, I'm a little bit. I haven't drank it in a while too. So,
Kenny, before you go,
pleasure.
Give me 10 seconds, Kenny. Just FYI, when you get your free time, let me know. We're going to arrange that discussion with Holy Kool-Aid. He's been busy with things too, but maybe sometime in the next couple weeks or so, we can figure out a time that both you have together, and then we can make that happen. Because I think that'd be an awesome, amazing discussion.
Yeah, and we've talked, and we're going to debate the Christian God. My argument is going to be that the unmoved mover or the uncomposed composer is the God of the Bible. So I'll be running down in that vein. So we've talked a little bit.
Shut it! What was that?
Sorry, I've got a bunch of kids. I don't even know what that was.
It really
was talking to you or someone else.
Go have dinner.
Yeah. We've got a daughter that we kind of adopted, and she lives in Sacramento. She's getting ready to have a baby. So I'm going to have a little grandkid here in just a couple months.
Oh, nice. So that's exciting.
Yeah. I'm going to have a little black grandkid.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, take care. Have some dinner, and we'll
so
arrange that date.
Does this mean that I'm a great grandfather then?
That is, yeah, absolutely. All right.
Wow.
Great chatting with you guys.
Later, man.
And I'm going to go eat some Okie enchiladas. Bye-bye.
Where you going, buddy?
So now what?
Well, now they're all running away.
Yeah. So now what? The now what statement is kind of like
now we have to have
finding
Skylar
Nemo.
claim he's been persecuted and ganged up upon, and
You haven't attacked Jamesism yet.
I like trying to take 3 Christians on at once. It's better.
and a polytheist.
And a polytheist.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I agree more with.
I don't think me and Ocean really disagree that much. So I was telling you earlier.
It's not a whole lot. It comes down to that like cornerstone issue of explaining experiences.
I think these are interesting conversations when it gets to the biblical discussions. I don't really have anything to add to them. I don't even know if half these things even were.
I don't give the Bible very much credence. So
personally, I love it. That's my thing. I love the Bible discussions. That's my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, I know it is. That's why I'm like, I just step out and I just listen at that point. I
think it's interesting the kind of claims that they make.
I don't really do the biblical stuff at all.
The biblical stuff is interesting from the perspective that, like, the claims that they make about the God are sometimes seemingly don't match up with, or incongruent rather, with the claims with the Bible itself, the stories.
Well, it depends on what type of God you're positing. I agree with you wholeheartedly on that, but not every Christian posits the same exact deity, and it's okay.
No, of course not.
I think a lot of people just lump them all together and say, "Oh, you take this type of omni God, and you take this type of God," and
well, it gets into a weird situation with, like, we were just talking about righteousness as a definition. That when you say righteousness is obedience to God, and then you say that God is righteous, or has righteousness, or is righteousness, and it's like, wait, does God obey God? Is that what makes God good? Is that He obeys His own commands?
Natural language, though. These words do have different meanings. They mean different things. They can, I mean, even later on the Bible says somewhere that there's no righteous people, no, not one. I think they're used differently in different times, and it's just a semantic thing.
Then God's setting everybody up for failure when He says, "Find me a righteous man." If there's nobody that's righteous that He knows.
You're a perfect and flawed being by nature that I made you to be. Go to hell for being imperfect and flawed.
Exactly. You are exactly as I designed you, and fuck you for that.
If there's a God that exists, I don't believe the type of God that's just, oh, you're going to hell, you're going to hell. I mean, the Calvinist God to me is just unimaginable. I
actually think that follows more of a biblical thing than actual Arminianism does. I think actually to look at it in a Calvinistic perspective is actually more biblical.
I'm not. That's not what I'm saying.
It's awful. That's the problem.
But I'm saying is I don't think that's the kind of God that would exist.
I think that atheists have the tendency to read the Bible in a very literalistic and sola scriptura type of way, and I think that it's because a lot of them come from a sort of young Earth creationist background.
I agree.
They do.
Well, I don't know, like when I was a Christian, like we weren't definitely, I don't even know I didn't even know the term young Earth creationist when I was a Christian, because we really didn't focus on those kind of things. Like I went to a non-denominational church where it was basically more focused on praise and worship, and it was like you would do Bible studies and things like that, but we wouldn't really get into like that kind of stuff. It was more like, hey, focus on Jesus. Jesus saved you. He's going to help you overcome your problems. Worship God, right? But like, I think the problem is when you talk to Christians, like you get totally different answers sometimes. And I'm not saying anybody in this room today was like totally different answers or anything like that. But like when you get to a topic where, how do I determine what's literal and what's not literal? Like I read Genesis and I completely feel that this is some kind of parable or allegory or something like that. It screams it to me where I hear a tree of knowledge of good and evil, a talking serpent.
I believe that those things that happened. I mean, I'm straight up. It's not a lack of belief. I straight up say I believe that there was no actual tree. I believe there was no serpent. I have no beliefs like that.
Well, we do have thousands of years.
It was not a talking snake.
Well,
I said serpent. I said, Steve might say snake. But
serpent means snake.
It doesn't even matter. It doesn't. It's just some kind of talking thing
that
isn't a human being.
It was definitely a talking thing, but not a snake.
Sure. So
I mean,
serpent.
I see it as worse when preachers and such call it Satan.
Don't step on stick.
Yeah. No, look. If it's just a a euphemism, if this we're calling him the serpent, that's fine. If it was Satan, okay, that's a different story. But when you're telling me it's an actual snake, because people read it hyper literally, that's where I'm like, no. Could there have been an instance where there was a demonic thing talking to somebody? Sure, whatever. I mean, I'm not going to really weigh on that, but I will say that I believe there was no snake talking.
Skylar, read the verse up inside chat.
You certainly will not die. The shining one told the woman.
Yeah, the shining
Genesis
one.
3:4.
Not snake.
Yeah, a nesh means the shining one, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I said serpent is what I said. I used whatever.
What is the nosh?
Nakash. Nakash as an adjective can be translated as to shine.
Yeah. That's.
So let me ask you.
So it's a divine being. Obviously, so Ocean would agree with me. It's a god. It's a particular.
I agree with you too. I read it.
Talking to Eve.
It's what you're saying is legit, but I did look into it last time you brought it up. But you see what I'm saying though? When people say though that they believe it was a literal serpent, that's when I'm saying I don't believe any of this literal interpretation stuff.
I agree. It's impossible for a snake to talk.
But there are
well, wait, hold on, General. What do you think this thing is then? You said it's like a godlike creature, a divine being. So what is this divine being?
It's just a. So remember when I told you that Genesis 1 is like a summary statement of natural history, ending with the emergence of the human species. Then Genesis 2 is highlighting, in this case, a certain geographical location where these humans are, and that's in the Persian Gulf area, where God wants to tabernacle with them. Now, God is not alone. Unfortunately, the Protestant Church will have you believe that God is just up there by himself, doing his thing. No, he's actually with a pantheon of other deity figures, like other gods, literally. In this case, you could call them angels if you wanted to.
Okay,
so one of these beings.
I gotta pause real quick on that, because did God create these other beings?
Yes.
Okay, so God created these beings. These beings have limitations?
Yes.
That God created? Okay. All right, so God created these beings with limitations, and then he allowed these gods with limitations to tempt his own creation.
Obviously, they're limitations because they're creatures. They're not eternal. They're not omnipotent. And all that.
So then these godlike creatures you're speaking about aren't eternal. You're saying that this creature isn't eternal.
They're creatures. They're not God. They're not Yahweh.
Okay, so what would God create a creature for? That with the purpose? Does this creature have free will?
Sure.
Okay, so God created a creature with free will that would have the ability to interact with his creation that he so loved and lead it in a direction that he doesn't want it to lead it in.
Well, to maximize evil, and hence through that to maximize good, so that this thing called Theosis can take place. And so when Theosis takes...
I didn't understand what you said.
There's a lot of assumptions in it.
Someone's making sound.
You said something the maximum. I don't understand what evil is. There was no evil, I believe, before Adam and Eve ate from the tree. Because evil is, from my understanding of Christianity, is disobedience to God.
Yeah.
Is evil? How would you define evil? Disobedience to God?
Yeah, basically chaos. Anything that's chaotic.
Beautiful. So basically, there was chaos and disobedience to God before the fall of man.
Yeah.
So God
in fact,
that could be disobedient.
I already said that.
Okay, beautiful. I'm just trying to follow the logic. So God created these beings, the serpent, whatever you want to call it, this being, that could be disobedient to him. And not only did he allow this being to be disobedient to him, he allowed this being to lead his beloved creation, Adam and Eve, off the track, which would cause all this suffering later on.
Yeah.
Why?
To bring about theosis.
What does that mean?
So to bring about deification, where in the sense that in the new creation, so it's not the creation that he created in Genesis 1. That was not kind of like the now I'll take up residence forever sort of thing. No, not Leonardo, this guy, what's his name?
I kind of just want to hear the definition.
Apart from Newton, who made calculus?
I don't want to get lost.
Leibniz. One second. I need to flesh this out so you can get where I'm coming from. So Leibniz, and Leibniz was building on prior Jewish philosophies on why did God even create to begin with. So the problem is that you have an eternal God that the moment he creates, whatever that comes out of this eternal being will always be by definition less than the eternal being. So if the eternal being encompasses perfection, whatever that means, whatever comes out of this being will be not perfect. But the eternal being wants...
I don't know how that follows, because God created a being that was just equal to him, I would imagine.
No, he can't. He can't create another eternal God.
There's things that God can't do.
Because to create an eternal being, that's like a paradox. You can't create eternality.
So God has limitations.
No, he doesn't have limitations.
Well, you just said it. He can't create a being that is eternal.
Because to bring into existence in a finite moment in time something that's eternal, that makes no sense.
Sure, but okay, so you're defining not being eternal as almost like a negative thing.
Yes, it is a negative thing.
Why is that? Why is that a bad thing not to be eternal?
1 second, let me finish my argument. So,
sure, I'm sorry.
Genesis 1 starts with this notion of chaos kampf, struggle against chaos, meaning the watery depths. It's dark, but the Spirit of God is able to tame chaos. So, at the get-go, you already have natural history. I mean, I'm an evolutionist. So you already have death and suffering that pre-exists the sort of fall of Adam. Adam's fall, when we fast forward to Adam's fall is more of a spiritual fall rather than merely physical. But then you have this entire history transpire through, obviously up until our day, and then maybe sometime in the future, who knows when Jesus returns and causes the new heavens, new earth. But the point is that what Jesus has finally done is that now it's possible for the new, when God starts to recreate, specifically in Revelation 21, when it says that in the new heavens and the new earth, there's no more sea. Well, John's being very careful with that language, because when he says sea there, he means chaos. There's no more chaos. There's no more chaos kampf. There's now what God originally wanted to happen, and that is a creation, meaning he wants creation to be perfect now rather than imperfect at the get-go. And it's only through Jesus' resurrection that's possible.
Yeah, but whoa. So you're now, I don't understand how, well, hold on. We're talking about imperfection now, which is weird. So you're saying that not being eternal is imperfection.
It is a form of being imperfect, because you're not.
Okay, but you can never make them. But you can never make somebody that was never eternal perfect.
But is it true? Is it true that
the form of imperfection?
Like you were once? 1 second. You were once a Christian. So did you once believe that in the resurrection you'll be eternally existing?
Yes.
But you'll be a creature at the same time in heaven, right?
I would be in heaven, yes.
But as a creature, but eternal at the same time.
Yeah, well, no, because I wasn't existing before. That's the definition you used earlier. Because I wouldn't be eternal. I didn't exist before.
Did you believe?
Well,
were you taught that after death, that's what you'd experience? You'd be.
Well, then what I was arguing earlier.
You'd be less than God, but eternal at the same time.
Yeah, but then now what I was arguing earlier makes sense by this definition. Because you're saying you're arguing that the serpent isn't eternal. But the serpent could have been eternal now by your definition.
No. No, everyone's a creature, But the point is that God wants a creature to be like him at the end of the day.
So,
That can't happen unless God joins himself to the creation to cause this hypostatic theosis, hypostatic union.
That's what I was trying to get you to. You didn't define it. That's what I was trying to get you to define what that means. I don't understand what you mean by that. To get God needs you to get to what did you say? Theosis. What was the term you used?
Theosis. It's
okay. What does that mean?
Maybe Oshiwara could elaborate more on it.
No. Just explain. What does that word mean?
It basically means to be deified, to become a god, to become like Yahweh.
Yeah.
To become divine.
So God wants us to become like Yahweh. So I'm trying to understand why he would allow a serpent or whatever this being is to lead us in the opposite direction of that then.
Well, that was the mechanism by which that sort of thing can happen. It was a particular mechanism.
What? I don't understand. What do you mean?
Because
how does that become a
not only
in which now I can become more like God?
But that mechanism doesn't frustrate what's already engraved into the laws of nature, and that is, in this case, true chaos and evil can take place, true free will can take place, and so God being God,
but he leads us away from. He tricks us, the serpent.
Yeah, but regardless, even if that didn't happen, regardless, the creation will be subject to entropy and decay and death.
Well, it didn't have to be. God decided to make it that way.
No, I already defined the parameters by saying it has to be like that. It can't be eternal.
No, well, that's an assertion that you can't back up. God created the world any way that he could have wanted to. He could have made it to where there was no entropy. Are you saying that God could have created human beings the way there was no entropy?
So God can create an eternal creature then.
One that could live forever? Is that what you mean by eternal?
Eternal as in all the attributes of God.
Okay, but he can never make human beings eternal.
Can he
by that definition?
Can he make Skylar fiction into Yahweh?
You already
can there be a Yahweh Skylar fiction?
So what? So he can't do it. Okay. So now what are you trying to? But your argument is your argument is
God.
I just said no. But you made the argument that that's what he's trying to do.
Yes, he is trying to do that.
But he can't do it.
Yes, he can. But not at the start.
Oh my God, dude! I don't. Is anybody else like not? I can't. I don't.
I'm really confused. Hold on a second.
I'm unbelievably like trying to figure out what you're saying. You're saying he can't do it, but then he's trying to do it.
The only way he can do it is if he joins himself in a hypostatic union with you.
Okay, what does that mean? Hypostatic union. What does that mean? How could he? What's a hypostatic union?
Now this may frustrate you.
One of them science terms I just don't understand.
I really need to understand what a hypostatic union is.
This is an ancient word.
A hyper-titty union? Is that what we're talking about?
This is an ancient word that was basically, you can't really, it's hard to, if you're going to translate that word, you would need like an entire paragraph to even explain what that word means.
Okay, come on.
So
don't cheat me out. Like you articulate what you're trying to say to me.
You want me to give the answer, but yet you keep butting in and not allowing me to talk.
But you're kind of like, but every time you do it, like you're like, well, you'd have to do this, and I have to do, like, just give it to me, like to your best of your ability.
So if I'm trying to caveat it with the fact that I'll need some time to explain this, because if I start explaining, you'll butt in. And you'll just cut me off, like,
I mean, just don't. You don't need to preface it. Just tell me what it is.
Okay. So one of the first instances of hypostasis is going back to God as a being. Now, God has these attributes of eternality, omniscience, and so on. Now, one of the great questions that we'll ask was, okay, if God thinks something, so whatever certain wisdom thought that happens in his mind, does that thought, is that thought finite? Well, if the thought is part of Yahweh, well, Yahweh is eternal, and therefore the thought has to be eternal, it can't be finite in nature. Now you have practically two Yahwehs. Now you have a hypostasis, where you have God and his wisdom and his thought process. So hypostasis is just another way of saying You have two things and yet one at the same time. And this is the basis for the Trinity. The Trinity works in this context. Now, that same word is then connected down to the terrestrial, where, okay, you have God up here, and he creates, the universe. But the model is that God is in a hypostatic union in the sense that it's not pantheism. So it's not a blend. It's not that God becomes the universe, or it's not deism where God is separate from the universe. It's kind of like if you have, say, one hand, like if you take your left hand and you take your right hand and you join those two hands together, but you don't cross your fingers over each other. So there's like they're meshed, but at the same time separate. And so they're connected in that context. So that's the hypostatic union between the eternal God and the creation.
So
and the ultimate version of that would be the incarnation, where you have the eternal Logos tabernacling in human flesh. So you have Jesus simultaneously finite and eternal at the same time. And then through that process of death and resurrection, he's able to cause this thing called theosis, where because of that connection, the creation then can experience what Yahweh is, and therefore that's the Christian hope, to be, made anew, as Paul, argues in his letters.
It just sounds like you're saying connection with God.
But General, isn't it through knowledge of God that we become like him, through seeing God face to face? Because that's all the way I always interpret it.
Yeah, I mean, that if you want it in a nutshell statement, so to see God face to face, you have this language of, well, you can't see God face to face. The only person that was able to see God face to face was his wisdom, the second Yahweh, which in this case is the second person of the Trinity, which is Jesus. Well, notice then you have this hierarchical structure where, okay, if we made in his image, in this case in the image of Christ incarnates into the creation, we then join into that resurrection. And so therefore when we are made, when we have when we experience theosis in Jesus, if Jesus can be face to face with the Father, and since we're joined with Jesus, then we can be face to face with the Father, and hence now we are eternal beings on the throne with Yahweh. And so therefore in that context we will never fall, we will never sin. Chaos conf is removed.
I honestly don't understand how that relates, what you just described, to why the serpent, or whatever you want to call it, the being, was necessary in order for us to have a connection with God.
You have, regardless of what happens, you have a creation that is subject to the bondage of the decay, thermodynamics, entropy, and so on. You have a creation
because God made it that way.
God made it that way because
that's correct.
That's the only way. That's the only creation that can happen.
Why? Why can the only creation that can happen have to involve entropy?
Because whatever creation he makes, it'll always be finite. It'll always be less than God.
Well, you're describing entropy as just less than God now at this point?
Yeah.
That's not what entropy means.
Yes,
no, that's not the traditional definition of entropy.
What's the definition of entropy?
If I were to go to the dictionary, let's just Google it. Let's find out.
I can tell you right now, because they're an app, so the general, but entropy is the unused energy in a system, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a weird abstract definition of entropy.
No, that
doesn't match up with any kind of understanding of
entropy is. Entropy is defined to be the unusable amount in any reversible thermodynamical process.
No, I'm not talking about you, Steve. I'm talking about general.
Wait a minute, that actually, I can ask Shar. She's the mechanical engineer in the light show. I'm pretty sure that my definition would be.
No, your definition is fine. What I'm saying is general definition doesn't match up with what you said.
It matches up perfectly with what I'm saying. The universe is not.
Saying something is less than God is not the same definition that Steve just gave.
The universe is not, like in this case, homogeneous. It's near homogeneous. It's near flat, but it's not perfectly flat in its surface geometry.
But okay, once again,
I mean, this is something that, for example, this is something that Lawrence Krauss, one second, this is something that Lawrence Krauss himself argues. He says, he ironically argues against William Craig by saying, okay, if you want, perfect fine tuning, I'd expect it to be 0, not 10 to the minus 122, orders of magnitude with respect to dark energy. And I agree with him. But the only time that it'll be 0 is what you see in Revelation 21. When there's no more chaos, there's no more.
God doesn't need to make a world with entropy. You can't. How are you going to argue that God necessity has to make a world with entropy?
So can God create another God? Another Yahweh? Can Yahweh create another God?
That's not the definition of entropy. You can't say that it just means God, lesser than God. That is not any kind of definition that we use in a general meaning within our civilization.
Again, ask the question, can Yahweh create in time and space and another eternal Yahweh?
Yes. I don't see why. Well, no. If you mean eternal as always existing, no. But that's not the definition of entropy.
So if he can't create another eternal Yahweh,
you keep skipping this point.
Create something that's finite in space and time.
You can have an eternal being.
Entropy is a natural result.
General, hang on.
No.
You can have an eternal being with a finite beginning of existence. Eternal doesn't have to be in both directions from one infinity.
In this case, no. In this case, eternal doesn't even include the time dimension. We're talking about no time.
But you ask if he could create an eternal being, then yeah, you can have an eternal being with a starting time.
Right, but in this case, we're talking about in space-time. Then comes this Yahweh figure with all the attributes of the prior Yahweh figure, whom didn't have any space-time attributes. It makes no sense.
Why? Wait a minute. No, the only difference would be is that he wasn't always there. God can make a being that's exactly like himself.
Now you've got it. But so if that's the case, entropy is, I mean, you see this right from the Planck epoch onwards. Entropy is a natural result of the laws of nature.
Yes, but that's not the same definition of what you're using. You're saying entropy means that it is less than God. Show me a definition.
But it is less than God.
Somewhere that gives me that definition.
The universe is less than God.
Any kind of dictionary that uses that definition.
Are you less than God?
I'm just saying, can you show me any dictionary?
No, answer the question. Is my computer?
I will.
Yes, I am less than God.
Now answer my question. Can you show me?
No. I don't think you should give up on that too easily.
Huh?
If you're less than God, it depends on what we're measuring by. If we're measuring by power to lie, then I am greater than God.
Yes.
I'm talking about ontological natures here.
Well, if you, I don't understand.
I still think that my answer applies.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't understand why that's a subjective term. When you say something's greater, that just means it's your opinion because somebody exists for eternally, that's greater than my existence for some reason.
I don't know. I think I'm pretty great.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think I'm pretty great for being born in the 70s, Like maybe I think it's better to be born in the 70s than to ever be born at all.
Fuck you. I was
born or ever be born eternally.
Better.
Yeah, 80s could be better. It's all just subjective terms.
So you claim to be greater than Yahweh.
Because I was born in the 80s.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yahweh was not born in the 80s.
And honestly, when I look at biblical text, yes, I would say that I'm better than God in a lot of situations.
Wasn't God dead by the...
Here's the thing. I think that Skylar fiction has commanded the death of less people than Yahweh has.
True. I've hurt less people than Yahweh has. And I would do things very, very different than Yahweh has. I would just say, hey, everybody come to heaven.
The keyword there is would. The keyword there is would.
You could be a universalist.
You exist as a mere creature with highly
right, but it's the God that we're talking about that has denied the ability for Skylar fiction to bring about a better world.
Exactly. Like, let me tell you what. If I were God, there'd be no starving people right now.
That doesn't. You completely in that context. 1 second. In that context, you completely ignore my statement that the new creation is exactly what Skylar fictions needs. God already has that in mind.
Skylar fiction would have brought it about in the first place.
Yeah, can I clear something up?
No, it was already.
I want to jump in real quick.
Go ahead, Bob.
Clear something up. I heard you say that God can't create something that's like eternal, right? Everlasting.
We've run through this a couple of times. It's got to be there's two definitions of eternal running around.
Well, that's why I said everlasting, right? So he said God can't create that, but then but then we're going to be recreated to be that, to be everlasting. When we have this hypostatic union, we're going to be that everlasting thing with God, but God couldn't create that in the first place. I don't understand that.
Good point. He could have just created us with that union and not had all the awful things that we don't need to get into.
So why you say no? Why do you say that he can't create us that way, but then he can recreate us that way? Why is it that way?
I'm still trying to figure out why. Well, I mean, I guess he can answer that question first, but I'm just trying to figure out why he thinks that from the fact that we're finite, entropy necessarily follows from that, or that the world has to be finite. Because I agree that the world has to be finite. I'm just not sure how he's connecting that to entropy.
Well, I'm connecting it because of what is always going up. The whole universe is going to be a sea of photons at one point, so the Earth is going to be around. So the Earth obviously has an expiration date.
Right.
Well, I think it does. I just don't know why God has to create it that way.
Yeah, you see, the whole why question, all I'm doing is, as a physicist, just looking at the universe and explaining to you, this is the way the universe operates. End of story.
Yeah, but the way the universe operates is because the way God made it to operate. Like he could have operate in any way that he chose to. He could have just made it to where everyone was in heaven.
The argument, did God create the universe because this is the only possible, the best possible of all worlds, or did he have flexibility?
Is that what you think, General? Do you think this is the best of all possible worlds, or
to bring about maximum evil and good, in my opinion, which would be the cross?
Okay. I think a little bit different.
I mean, Archie-Wawa, you'd agree with that, right?
No, actually, Thomas think that God could create the world pretty much however he wants. He just freely chose to do it this way.
No, I mean, okay, I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying, of all the possible worlds, which world would bring about maximum evil and maximum good? In this case, what would be the maximum good as a Christian?
I think the maximally good world is impossible because you could always have a world with one more really awesome tropical island on it.
Well, right. That's exactly right. That's why Thomists don't believe that there's
who actually used that argument. Wait, I've read that before.
That's
a mixture of Plantinga and another one.
Yeah, I've actually read that article. I've actually read.
Yeah, that's actually. I'm surprised.
No, it wasn't Plantinga. It was
Jesus and
I think Plantinga
was
he was relating it, but it was two philosophers that were corresponding with each other on I think it was
Perfect Worlds. It was saying that it's he was likening to a perfect world to a perfect island, and that you could always have an island that's a little bit bigger, a little bit better.
Ontological argument, but I can't remember.
That was Anselm's argument.
Anselm's. Okay, I was right.
Yeah, it was actually.
I've read something.
Plantinga responded to it.
Well, there was a medieval philosopher before Plantinga who brought up that objection. But to answer what General is saying, yeah, like I think that
I thought it was Anselm. Thank you.
I think that that you could always have a better world because every world that God could create is infinitely less than God. So that's why God has free will, because any world that he creates is going to be infinitely less than him. He doesn't have to, there is no best possible world that God could create.
I think that Plantinga brings up a good. He was saying one. He was in his response to the perfect island thing. He was saying that you could always have a world with one more good intentioned person in it, and so the best possible, you wind up getting into an infinity problem.
Yeah, and I don't think that God necessarily has to, like, I don't think God's goodness is contingent upon what he does in the world. I think that God is, you know, good in and of himself, and what he gives to the world is independent of that. Silence.
So I had
So
a
God
background
also,
here, so
God
I
is also evil then, right?
But one thing I don't think that
Polytheism wins.
to do is people say, oh well, in our the way we you view things, if there's one less person suffering, it would be a better place. I don't know if that's a great argument to use against the best possible world scenario. If there is a God and he says that this is the best possible world to have this whatever outcome he wants to be, then this is the best possible world to have that happen, to make that come to fruition. But the downside of that is that if that's the case, this world now becomes a necessity, right? It becomes a world that's by necessity, not contingency.
Right. Exactly.
And that presents a whole different problem, obviously.
But yeah, and the thing is like I think it's a shitty argument. The whole this is the best possible world it could be, because it greatly it retards God in a sense. Like it makes him like this imbecile who can this is the best I can do for whatever my goal is, right?
Well, then the other
what is the goal?
I have to compliment him on nebulas. Nebulas are pretty cool.
Nebulas are awesome. But the other option,
they're beautiful to look at,
and let it go randomly, right? He said, "Okay, I'm
gonna
create the universe and here let's roll the dice with it."
I'm also a fan of Jupiter.
Well, that's fine, but then we're not talking about a Christian God either, though. And then we're just talking about some kind of deistic, creator God who just said, "Hey, let me roll the dice, see what happens." When that makes much more sense than the problem of evil and things like that, because then it's like, well, hey, now it's like, hey, I left you guys to be, and you guys kind of did this shit on your own, and that's why it's so bad. That makes more sense. But when you're talking about a Christian God, or a God with purpose that knew. Because keep in mind, part of the attributes of the Christian God is to know what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah. So hang on. Not necessarily. There's our open theism where God doesn't.
Yeah, but I don't think we're talking to any theists in the room that believe that.
Yeah.
Basically.
So God can still have a purpose for creation, even if it's not necessary that he created this particular world. The only. So I do believe that God necessarily has to will himself in creating willing creatures. So he has to will himself as the end of creatures, is what I believe. So there is that kind of necessity there that comes out of, because so basically the way the argument goes is that whatever somebody wills is sort of a cause of their action, right? And since God's the first cause, he can't will anything else in and of itself. He can only will it in willing himself as the end. So he primarily wills himself as the end because otherwise something else would be the cause of his willing.
Wait a minute, say that again. Okay, so God wills something, right? What does that mean? So basically he wants something, right?
Well, he's directed towards it as his end. That's what it means. It
directs something towards the end, okay, so is his natural, so his natural being, because of the being that he is, naturally wants these things, or
yeah, is naturally tending towards it. Yeah.
Okay, so he naturally tends towards these things. Okay, so now when we look at the creation of our world, what we're in, so basically his natural being is to want what exists now.
Well, no, he naturally desires himself. That's what he desires. And so things that he creates on the side, that just come out of it, he only does that willing himself as the end. So for example, whenever he wills human beings, he's ultimately willing that we have this end built into us, for example, to learn things, right? And ultimately, I think that, what we're looking for whenever we're learning things as what we're directed towards, we're looking to ultimately know God, ultimately to know the first cause. Because whenever we know, for example, a star, and we see, hey, look, that star up there, it's sparkling, right? It's I wonder what causes it to sparkle. We naturally have this desire built into us. And we're going to want to know what the cause is of the sparkle. And then, once we figure that out, we're going to want to know a further cause, right? And we're going to just keep on desiring and desiring and desiring until we know the first cause, which is God. So I think that every creature has this sort of
But Bochi, all you're doing is positing something to get rid of the infinite regress, which is not a problem anyways. People think it's some kind of problem. It's really not. But I mean, you're just positing a being because we hate infinite regress. Our minds don't like that idea. So the whole principle of the first cause, if you accept the principle of sufficient reason, is that God is the unmoved mover, the first uncaused cause, right? So, but to me, that's just one way to get around the problem, but it doesn't necessarily solve anything. It's just an assertion saying, okay, well, I don't like this problem of infinite regress. This particular hypothesis can get around it, but as people had pointed out before, it's unverifiable, it's unfalsifiable.
So when I was talking about the infinite regress in that case, recognize I was talking about with regard to a star sparkling, right? And I was talking about what causes the star to sparkle. So I'm not talking.
Sparkle.
Well, whatever.
Planets sparkle. Stars are the source. That's how you know when it's a planet that you're looking at. Is with a little bleep in the sky.
Sparkle, planets don't.
What? No.
Yes.
What?
Light
No, they don't.
Much less than a planet, so that's why the light will cause more.
What?
More disturbance.
Did you say the light from a star is less than that of a planet?
Yes.
Are you fucking with me, Steve?
No, we receive much less photons from a pinpoint of light from a star than we do reflected from a planet. That's why planets are much brighter.
Yeah, that's true. That's why they call it.
What?
Well, that's why they call it the metallicity of those planets and so on.
God damn it! I've been saying some stupid shit my whole fucking life.
Atmospheric distortions will distort the light from stars, not from planets.
All right. Well, I'm an idiot. Stars do sparkle. Go on.
Yeah. I would have used the term. I'd call it twinkle.
Twinkle, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
that's not really the point. but I'm just trying to say all of these different causes have to exist simultaneously with these twinkling or whatever. So we're talking about like a hierarchical infinite regress. So like I would agree, and St. Thomas Aquinas would agree that there's nothing wrong with like an infinite regress into the past. But whenever we're talking about a hierarchical infinite regress, we're talking about like something built up on top of another. So it would be like having turtles all the way down.
Right, or you can have a self-sustaining infinite universe that just has either cycles or something that has always existed. Now, I don't particularly find that comforting.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about an infinite regress into the past. I'm talking about here and now. Like another way to think about it is if you think about how things are divisible into parts, like the parts, the whole depends on its parts for its existence. Well, it's not a regress into the past. It's here and now. That's where the cause is. So I agree that you can have an infinite regress into the past. It's just I don't think you can have it here and now because otherwise basically reality is standing upon nothing.
But you're more talking about infinite regress as far as a causal link, right?
Yeah.
A chain of causal links. I think that at a certain point where there might not actually be a cause anymore, though. Quantum mechanics has shown that we don't have to have causes for things.
Well, I have an argument against that. So the basic statement that you have is that whatever exists has to have virtue, that in virtue of which it is distinguished from nothing, either in itself or another. So basically, since I don't think that things that aren't their own cause, things that aren't self-sustaining, that they don't have existence in virtue of themselves, so they have to get it from another. That's basically the idea. So whenever it comes to like quantum mechanics or whatever, I can admit that, say, whenever it comes to virtual particles, right, something's just coming. Some people would say, okay, this is just coming into existence out of nothing. Let's just take that as a possibility, right? Sure, fine. So nothing was prior to it, and then something exists now. That's perfectly fine under my view. All I would say is that there has to be ultimate ground for the virtual particle existing here and now. That's not contrary to what virtual particles are talking about. So like, for example, whatever.
Well, I see the distinction you're making. You're saying that the virtual particles, we can show why the virtual particles are created. We can't, however, come up with a reason why they happen to be created at that time, what the cause was that actually determined for them to be created at that specific time. We know the mechanism by which they're created, but we can't know is when virtual particles are being created.
Well, that's not even really what I'm saying. But the indeterminism, the uncausedness, right? It has to do with prior cause. It has to do with like a physical cause, right? And I'm talking more about like an ontological ground for the existence of this. Say if you have a virtual particle pair and it's like on the edge of a black hole, and then one becomes like a real particle. I believe that's how it works.
Yeah, that's how it works. That's why I boiled away. That's Hawking radiation.
Right, and that real particle, it has to have a ground for its existence, an ontological ground. So it has to have that in virtue of which it's distinguished from nothing, either in itself or in another. All right. And I would say that the particle that comes out of that does not have that which it's distinguished from nothing within itself. It doesn't exist in virtue of itself. In other words, existence is not part of what it is. Not by nature. Its essence is not.
I don't even know how to see, but I don't even know how to wrap my head around those. Would you say things like that? To be honest,
it's very difficult to understand.
Hey, Gret, do we know Gret?
Bye, Gret.
Hi, Gret. Do we know you? You have to unmute.
My bad.
Oh, hi.
Yeah, I was just dropping in for a second. I just got done. You don't know me. Hold on. Who was it that Steve McRae just dropped this link in my Twitter and I clicked it? I don't know where I am right now.
No, that's cool. That's me. Hi. Yeah, no, anybody can join. I just gotta make sure that they're legit.
Dropping links in people's Twitters you don't even know.
No, I'm just linking my Twitter.
You're getting a little handsy there.
Yeah, I don't touch people's Twitter. I'm not.
You're making it harder to keep stream snipers out, Steve.
No, I don't care if he gets sniped. I can actually prevent that.
Just freely admitting to fondling his Twitter.
I'm not
fondling
Twitter.
Well, Gret just came over. Gret just had a conversation with Pine Creek, so I didn't watch it.
Twitter rape.
That's who? Pine Creek?
Yeah.
Doug
from Pine Creek.
Over there on the. He's tried yelling at me before. It didn't work.
Oh, okay. All right, so, hey, what's up, Gret? So talk to us. Have you been paid?
Oh, guys, I just did like I think it was like 1.5 hour conversation on objective morality with Doug from Pine Creek. So I'm exhausted. So I'm not going to be around for very long.
How sober are you after that?
Well, I had a couple of glasses, so I'm sober, but not.
So you're on Pine Creek. So are you talking to? You're a Christian or no?
I'm a Christian, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Do you accept objective morality?
Do I? Yeah, I do.
Because I mean, I'm agnostic. I am fine with objective morality. My only issue is that I don't think you have to attribute objective morality to an agency. I don't think. I don't think you have to use my command theory for it.
I'm not getting into this right now.
Disagree with me. We'll be fine.
He just had this conversation.
Just agree with Steve and everything is fine.
Now he's back to level 1 with us. He's got to.
All you have to do is say, you're very much correct. That's all.
I'll tell you what. Westbrook, Holy Kool-Aid, he agreed to do a debate with me on this channel. So I'm hoping.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I had dropped a Twitter link to get Thomas in here, and you were tagged in it. That's
how I got it. So anyway, we'll be doing that sometime in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'll moderate for that. That'll be interesting.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
That'll be on my main channel. This is my alternate channel.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome. Welcome to the Great Debate community. If you haven't joined us yet,
this is what we call a Christian's hit and run.
But this is our alternate channel. This is our I don't know how to explain this.
Wait, is this the guy that'll be debating R and Ra?
I'm exhausted at the moment, but I'll be ready.
Yeah, I'm the guy that debated R and Ra.
Soon enough.
Did we find one, Steve?
Oh, the flat earther?
Yeah, did we find a flat earther
I might go with part-time vegan. Yeah, I think I'm part-time vegan. I don't. I mean, Aaron says.
So, did you see what I put in the side chat?
But oh my God, Ocean was going off on Aaron on my Facebook.
Oh no, I think he's pathetic.
I know. Yeah, you don't like him. I can tell. You were going off on him, and I'm like, holy shit, Ocean, damn.
Really? Kind of annoys me too. I'll be honest. I agree with Ocean.
Off on Aaron?
Raw is going off on him on my Facebook. Yeah, I mean.
Okay, so here's my position on Aaron Raw. Here's okay. So
wait. So
let me do a thing.
Well.
Let me do a thing.
I want to hear this.
I see on Steve's page, Aaron Raw wants to debate a flat earther, and in my mind, I'm like, is this where Aaron Raw is at? Is this the level to which he is sunk to?
Ocean just doesn't get it. I don't know.
He wants to debate a flat earther because he can't seem to fucking win against anybody else.
No, I've explained this before.
He does so horribly.
He wants to debate a flat earther.
He did badly with Matt Slick.
That's a funny way of putting it.
He's done badly with Seamus of all people.
Let me say this.
I can't think of anybody that he's won against that wasn't a creationist, or a flat earther, I guess, if he's ever talked to a flat earther. I don't even know. But I'm sure he can hold his own against
It's better than the low-hanging fruit Logic went for earlier.
He wants to debate now he's low-hanging fruit. He wants to debate a flat earther.
So he can win. He wants to shoot fish in a barrel with a shotgun. That's what he wants to do.
No, because he believes that all flat earthers are Poes, and there's no flat earther that actually believes that the earth is
So he wants to debate a Poe? What kind of idiot is he?
No, that's the point. Ocean, you're not listening here.
Oh, it's fucking hilarious.
He wants us to find one that's
There's no such thing as a real flat earther, therefore bring me one.
No, he wants to find one that is not a Poe. That's why it's been difficult.
Ocean has some pretty good points.
Like the guy seems to, he wants to put another victory in his butt. And he spends all of his time fighting young earth creationists, like the lowest of the low in Christianity. He doesn't get into it with anybody that's more complicated than that. Granted, his main issue is science, all right? His main issue is science, protection of science. The guy lives in Texas. So, yeah, debating creationists is a relevant issue for him as far as his local politics and like the issues that he finds important. Great. But then he gets into all this other shit where he makes assertions about, like, in relation to feminism and Christianity in general, but he won't touch anybody that's like a little bit higher. I think that even Matt Slick is the most competent person I've ever seen him debate, and I think even he's a creationist.
So rhetoric that he's just wasting time with flat earthers, that he's just doing low-hanging fruit?
Ocean, to be a little biased, he did debate me. So
you're better than Matt Slick. I don't know how that. I didn't see that.
That was a horrible discussion.
You had a debate with Aaron Raw?
I said
how did that go?
It was bad.
Because
it was horrible.
Was it bad because Aaron Raw did badly, or was it bad because Han Solo
Aaron Raw did badly? He wasn't listening to my arguments. I was giving the peer reviews.
What I would figure would happen. Here's what I would figure would happen. Just not knowing anything is that I figured that Han Solo, you went way over his head, and wanted to have a conversation that he didn't understand nor want to have.
Right.
So he kept trying to bring it back to a different conversation that he can understand more. Is that what happened?
Yes.
Okay. And he conceded a lot of points and just basically said, remove the God word from the Bible. Everything else is historical fact. That's literally his conceit.
Aaron likes the very superficial philosophy stuff. He doesn't go into any...
So he conceded the Exodus in that debate. Because he was a Moses Mytho promoter, and given 20 more minutes into the discussion, he's like, okay, I concede these points. Just remove God from it.
That there was...
Okay, so he's saying that the Bible is a historically inaccurate book. Is that what the debate was on? Was whether or not it was historically accurate?
The start of the 2-hour debate, that was his position. At the end of the 2-hour debate, he's like, "Wow, maybe there are historical verifiabilities with the stories. Just remove the God from it."
Ocean, you gotta remember, Aaron was the one that was pushing the whole zeitgeist at one time, that Horus and Jesus. He had all that going too. Right, I mean, so he
was agreeing with them or disagreeing?
He was agreeing with them a long time.
He was agreeing.
God damn it! Of course he was.
So I mean, he does. He has this very. He's not when he goes into like a discussion.
Is he the most gullible atheist, or is he?
He's not going to have a discussion.
I love Ocean, man. I love. You know what's funny is Ocean. I don't think you liked me very much when you first met me back in the day.
Nobody likes you.
No,
I do like you actually.
No, you do now. But way back in the day, you didn't care for me that much. Because I remember.
No, you were a deist back then, weren't you?
Yeah, but you remember when I made that video, Living Buddha, Living Christ, or what was it? I forgot what it was, but I was really attacking Shamos at one point. And you didn't really care for me that much. You thought I was kind of being disingenuous with my videos, like I would edit the videos or something like that. But I think I grew on you.
I think that if I recall correctly, whenever you would make videos on Veckel, I would agree with them because Veckel is a little shit. But I think there was one video that I did get mad at you about. I don't remember what it was, but I think it was just particularly about that video and not really against you. But I don't even remember the video in question.
I would have beers with all of you. All of you are good men, good lads.
Oh, you don't remember him when he was a deist. Skylar, when he was a deist, was a bit of a cock.
I feel like I'm more of a dick now than I was when I was a deist.
When Skylar, Skylar's good at doing like the street epistemology stuff, where he gets somebody like in a conversational setting, and then it's just like kind of talks them out of their kind of situation. Problem is when he gets into that situation with somebody who's just fucking contentious. And when you have like a conversation with it, it's somebody who's like batshit,
like Matt Slick,
or like Matt Slick, or or Matt Bell, or something like that. Like if you had a conversation with Matt Bell, he would just go nuts on you.
Well, they banned me. Like the Bible thing we wing that show, I'm blocked on everything. Like,
are you?
Yeah, they won't even let me on their channel anymore.
Here's a question: okay, did you ever have Darwin's deity on your show at all? I don't think
so. Here's what I've done. No, he's never come on my channel. Mine. So I've gone into his rooms. I've gone into MK rooms where I'm there, and then I take the video clips and put them on my channel. But no, he would never come into my room by any means.
That's what I figured.
By the way,
no, but I've gotten him a couple times.
He loves home field advantage.
Hey, Ocean, before I forget,
I've gotten Darwin's deity to basically admit that he doesn't believe in objective morals. He's like, I don't agree with that. There's no objective morals.
Huh.
Like weird things he said to me. Not because I think he generally believes it, just because he didn't want to talk about it, basically.
Right.
Before I forget, Ocean, I am going to have, I think it's on the 4th, November 4th, Anthony Magnabosco on, the guy that does the street epistemology thing. I want you there. I want him to run it on you. That should be pretty interesting.
I've had street epistemology run on me before. It generally doesn't.
Well, yeah, but he
doesn't go very far. But yeah, sure, we can. Is he street epistemology Christian or atheist?
Atheist.
Okay. Yeah. Then
whatever happened to that Ken Hovind thing that you were gonna set up with me? Remember me and Ken Hovind? We were gonna.
Did Ken Hovind fuck off? Is that what happened, Steve?
Well, I know he wants to have debates on his own channel. I just got disinterested, to be honest with you. After Bill Lolo destroyed him, I was like, I don't even know if I even want to like continue with this. And
that was pretty much a deconstruction.
Yeah.
Especially since like there was one before that where he won really, and it was like, you're gonna have, if you have a bunch of debates with Ken Hovind, at one point he's gonna win.
Yeah, like Nolan.
And somebody won, or he won against somebody before the Bill Ludlow debate.
But I think I was like, let's just go out on top, kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it was pretty much the only video that was needed, where Ludlow pretty much like just deconstructed everything that was his position.
And he doesn't really want. I mean, his thing was he wants to talk about evolution. He doesn't give a shit about the moral arguments.
Right. It's a lot of stuff that mainly people are interested in now. It's just they're not his subject. Right. He's a creationist. He's not really.
I made a big mistake, and the first atheist video I introduced my mother to was Aaron, fuck. And
whatever.
How he sort of goes off insulting Christians 90% of the time.
Well, and that's one of the things that I understand there's a lot of rhetoric out there.
He's thorny, and that's not what I hold against him though.
But I don't think I don't think it really adds anything to the conversation. When people talk about things like, Christians and their sky daddy, I don't think it adds anything to the conversation. I just think
he's a very dismissing atheist. Yeah. And like there's a value to people like him where he's kind of he's a stormtrooper kind of thing, but I think like a stormtrooper, he doesn't hit very often. He just kind of shoots in all directions.
He has to be in the right place at the right time for his little area.
Yeah, if the right place for him is debating a creationist. Yeah, and that's about all he can hit.
Yeah, look what happened when he got exposed to the photo argument. I mean,
the shit went crazy when he got exposed to that. It seemed like he almost deliberately didn't understand it. It was ridiculous.
Of course he didn't, and I recognize he didn't, and I'm like, okay,
And then you didn't want to host someone addressing it with him. I think that would have been amazing if you had just had like Josh or Jack just one-on-one with him, talking to him about the photo argument.
Fine with that, but they came in with a deliberate. I mean, it was all about sabotaging, and then they just would not listen.
But that's because it's Godless Girl. Godless Girl is about sabotaging. Bitch is a troll. All right, she's a fucking troll. You know that shit. She comes in and she starts screaming at people, and she gets all scratchy and shit. All right, it's what she does. You let her do it. But if you have somebody like
someone
Jack,
explain to me?
Jack comes in and does the photo argument, and he's going to stick to point. It's going to be like the academic agent conversation with him, where he just stuck to the point, and then academic agent went losing it because he couldn't cogently argue against communism of all things. It was fucking hilarious. But if you could do the same thing to Aaron Ra easily, where he would just be calmly sticking to the point, and Aaron Ra would go nuts.
Well, because Aaron is going to take it and run with it as an attack on natural selection, and
of course, that's exactly what he's going to do. He's going to try and call Jack a fucking theist.
Explain what?
The photo argument.
We're not gonna
what is that?
It's too complicated.
Look it up. It's kind of a bitch.
Yeah.
Basically, it's trying to say that natural selection is not a scientific theory.
Yeah,
because it can't predict anything.
Natural selection doesn't do what it says it's going to do about being able to explain and predict. Because in order for natural selection to do what it's supposed to do, it has to have what's called intentionality, but to try to select between two coextensive traits, and it can't do that.
But he's mad because in the conversation with Aaron Ra, Godless Girl comes in and starts making this argument, and Godless Girl has some great one-liners like, "Why do you believe in God? Are you stupid or something?" And she comes in with Fodor's argument because she's got an entertainment for arguing for the theist side now, and because she says arguing for theist side is more fun, and she's a blatant fucking atheist, and comes in and just blows Aaron Ra's poor little mind with this, and it became Aaron Ra, who's Aaron Ra, versus somebody who's fucking shit disturbing troll that understands Fodor's argument.
Goddess doesn't understand it either. She's just
yes, she does. No, she does. In point of fact, she gets it.
Josh understands.
And so does Josh.
Hurting Josh.
I think they both do, but Josh might understand it better. But Godless Girl does get it.
All right, maybe.
So she just was. It's like, how do you predict? She was asking very simple and honest questions. I thought she hadn't even gotten into troll mode yet. That was what was funny about it.
I even said during that discussion, I said, look, what they're saying is legit stuff, which put me in a bad light, but it was true. I mean, what they were saying wasn't wrong. I do understand Fodor's argument, but I wasn't going to try to explain to Aaron. I mean, it's a very, very in-depth argument. I mean, you have to understand the difference between extensionality and intentionality, and not many people can really grasp those concepts.
Wait, is this based on the book What Darwin Got Wrong by Jerry Fodor?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've read the whole excerpts on his argument and the rebuttals against the argument for Fodor's argument.
The rebuttal is basically.
But are there legitimate rebuttals against the argument?
Yeah.
It depends on who you're asking. The rebuttals are basically that Fodor's creating a straw man.
Yeah, and there's some legitimacy in that regard. I mean, one of the easiest way to get rid of Fodor's argument is actually, believe it or not, posit a deity.
What?
So
yeah,
the fuck are you doing, Steve?
I'm giving the here, but they haven't ran with it. I don't know why they don't, but that is a legit way to solve the problem.
Plantinga's evolutionary argument against naturalism?
No, that's the different argument.
No. If you posit a deity, that doesn't mean that it's a theory anymore.
No, but the deity can give it an intentionality. The deity can actually, with the deity posited, it basically allows a natural mechanism to select between those two traits. So God gave God could give natural selection the ability to do that. Now, do I think it's exponential? No, but that is actually
Isn't that RTV's model at the end of the day?
You know what? Probably something RTV would go with. Yeah.
I mean, that sounds very much like what Buzz would argue for.
Yeah. All right, guys, I gotta go to bed.
Yeah, get out of here, drunk bastard.
It was a pleasure, General. Thanks for having a conversation, man. I know it was.
No worries, Skylar.
I've had a couple of drinks, so if I was a little,
Skylar, next time we meet, can I choke your beard?
I had too many beers, huh?
Can I stroke your beard next time we meet?
Maybe.
Skylar, I consider you my friend. There's no animosity between you.
No, General. And honestly, General, you're honestly one of the Christians on here that I generally respect. And I didn't really I forgot what the other guy, Awachi, whatever. He was really nice too.
Chihuahua.
Chihuahua. Yeah, I just didn't get. I just want to tell you that I appreciate you guys. It was a great conversation, and General, you're one of the people I really respect on here. But yeah, I did have a couple drinks, so I was probably a little more aggressive than I usually would be. But anyways, it was great.
It's okay. I forgive you.
The gods forgive you.
The gods forgive me.
No, they don't. That's beside the point, though.
Maybe I'll become a deist again. Who knows? Maybe we'll move back to deism, and
I'll slowly tempt you into polytheism.
Probably not going to happen.
So you can agree with me and Han Solo.
I agree with both of you. Anyways, it was fantastic, guys. I got to get some sleep. I got to be up at 6:30 in the morning. Steve, thanks for hosting this. I'll be around a lot more often now for a little bit, so we'll see what happens.
Glad to have you back. Glad we got this on here, and hope to have you having some hangouts on your channel so we can, get over there so I don't have to always host, so I can get more involved. And
who knows? All right, guys. You guys have a good one, all right? Appreciate you.
See ya.
Thanks.
Now
I
what?
like that guy.
Yeah, he's really cool, isn't he?
He has a nice beard.
All
He
right,
hasn't
guys.
seen
So
my
I guess
beard, has he?
we'll probably wrap it up here. What was I gonna say? Oh, I have no idea. I'm so tired. Anybody want to add anything?
I want to see Aaron Raw in a debate without Chihuahua.
That would be interesting.
I'd rather see. Well, can you imagine? Okay, what about Kenny and Aaron?
Kenny?
Yeah.
The guy that was just here.
Yeah.
I don't know how that would go. I don't know much about him.
Well, so again, he's not a young Earth creationist. That's the problem. Again, Aaron really shines against young Earth creationism. That's his area.
Right. He's great on easy mode.
I mean, come on. I mean, not everything.
Like,
I could run young Earth creationist arguments by you that you don't have a clue on.
Hey, I don't care. It doesn't affect me.
Well,
I don't give a shit about
I get that, but I mean, you still have to know some stuff to defeat. The
Yeah. If you want to get into like all the little bits and pieces of evolution that creationists get all in a tizzy about, like it just doesn't. I don't care about it.
Like, we're gonna be talking.
Like, if somebody wants to be scientifically illiterate, that's on them.
I get that. I get that. We're going to be talking about helium diffusion rates, and that's a very, very complicated topic. General, the paper you sent me?
Yeah, the 35-page.
Yeah, barring the appendices, right? Because I don't care about the appendix.
Because that paper is a lot longer than the American affiliation paper.
I've read that before.
All right, here's a proposition I want to put to you, Steve.
I was talking to I was talking to General for a second. Hang on.
Okay, fine.
Okay, wait. So I putting aside the appendixes because that's all the hardcore math, which I get most of it or some of it, right?
Well, but you need the appendix to justify the math. So.
Yeah. But I don't have to really know that in detail. But the rest of it, right? The first some odd pages, I understand. I've read it before. Right. I reread it. I've got the 5 major points, and I've told Dr. Lachey, or how do you pronounce his name? Is it Lachey?
I honestly don't know.
I think it's
Lachey.
But I'm going to ask him. But he is a Christian, by the way, and he's very fond of reasons to believe. I don't know if you know that. Did you?
Yeah, no. He's written as a guest writer. He's written on their page, on their blog.
I talked to him specifically about that, and he's like, "Oh, that's really good to know."
In fact, what I'll do is I'll link you those specific blog posts on the RTV page.
Yeah, no. They're the ones I went to actually were for.
Okay.
But they did have links on his page on him before, yeah. But he actually is going to contact Anastasia, and I know she's going to put in a great word for me. So, but that was his concern. But anyways, what I told him, because he said, this is something that's going to be very difficult to distill down to the layperson. What's the level of the group that you're at? I'm like, well, very few have the level to understand what the topic's going to be. But what I'm going to do is act as the middle person, and hopefully with your help, what we'll do is we'll take the 5 major points, the rebuttals of the argument, and basically distill them down. And just like the basics with one, the formula they used for the spatial relationships, the geometric formula, was incorrect because it was based upon the wrong amount of spherical size radius.
Yep.
They went with 30 microns instead of like 20 microns. So I know that one. They've also went with he also pointed out the heat distribution for the thermal effects was they, for some strange reason, assumed uniformitarianism meant constant temperature throughout the entire time. I don't know what that to me is just dishonest. I mean, I don't even know how Humphreys could even begin to think that that's what uniformitarianism means. Okay, so that was the other thing he brought up. If you look at the diagram,
the more I look at their papers, the creation that rate study, the more I wonder if they even
seriously horrible
received legitimate PhD. You know,
it's scary. It's scary bad. I'm not even at your level in physics, and I'm looking at this going, this is what the hell. I mean, how do you hold something constant from different depths, and then say I'm going to hold this constant because it is uniformitarianism? That is not what uniformitarianism even remotely means.
Yeah.
And then the other things he pointed out was obviously there's one with the different domains, a multi-domain versus a single domain. Okay, so some of the high helium atoms are going to be more able to go through microfissions and channels, be diffusing quicker rather than ones locked into a crystal lattice. So
we're getting further and further away from the point that I want to make.
Well, we're talking science now, which is something I like.
I know. I wanted to make a point real quick.
Okay, finish your point. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, what I was going to say is, it kind of in the face of the Aaron Ross situation, that creationists have, in fact, I think, been good for science overall, because it has caused people to dive into it more in order to refute them.
Overall, yes. But they have still.
I actually agree with that. Yeah,
I do too.
That's good.
And Todd Wood has made a channel on that, right? How creationism taught me real science.
Yeah, that's awesome. You know, because I think that science as a reaction to Christianity specifically has been good for science overall. It's popularized science because there's drama there. There's a struggle, and it's more interesting.
But I'm surprised it's not as big as it should be. I mean, people know the Great Debate by this point. They know the subjects, and they know who Aaron is. They know who a lot of us are. More people than you possibly imagine. I mean, we have thousands of people a day hitting videos in the Great Debate community, thousands a day, and all these people that are like being added as subs. I don't know half these people. People commenting, I don't even know half of them anymore. That's how big it's gotten, right? So I don't know why it's not even more larger than it is, because I think that more people would have an interest in this types of stuff, and I think that there's probably a lot more lurkers out there than people who just get involved. Because somebody's watching these videos. I mean, people get 30,000 hits. So that's a lot of people watching a video. It's not just like.
Also, Steve, what I'll do is I will give you Hugh Ross's attempt at explaining it at a lay level, so that maybe you can see how he, you can compare.
Yeah, you can send me, because like I said, I'm gonna summarize the points that Dr. Lachey is making, and the criticism against the helium fusion rates, and then when we actually have the discussion.
Right. Where do you want me to post this in Google Hangouts or on Facebook?
Just send it to me. Just send it to me directly through the Google Drive. But I mean, you read that.
Okay. What I'll do is I'll put it in PDF, and then I'll send you the files through Facebook.
Did you read what you sent me though? Do you know his arguments against helium diffusion rates?
Who?
Do you know the rebuttals for the helium diffusion rates? Do you know what the things that rates got wrong?
I'll need to refresh myself on that.
Okay. Refresh yourself, and then, like I said, let's get together. Somebody's doing a video on it. I don't know if they. Yeah.
So when is this interview?
He's going to try sometime probably near the end of November.
Okay, that's great, because I'll be free then.
But I might as well say, I think Apology, I think, might do a video on this particular topic. So that's one of the reasons why I got this started. So if we can get with him, he doesn't understand this because he's not into the physics. So.
And I got news from the Council Google Plus, the folks that run that. Apparently, they're going to be inviting Jason Lyle into a hangout to interview him, and they were wanting either yourself or myself to go in and be the counter rebuttal to his young creationist stuff. But I don't know when that's going to happen.
I was trying to get a hold of Jason Lyle as well, but I wanted King Crocoduck to be there.
Exactly.
So they invite us for Lyle, but they won't invite us to get us to Silvestro.
I know. Doesn't that say something?
Yeah, well, Silvestro is a lie. I mean, he's just duplicitous as all hell.
Right.
Do you guys remember Anthony Silvestro? You guys recognize that name? Dr. Anthony, he was a chiropractor.
What was it? Potassium is a P?
Yeah. Potassium with a P.
No, and then the argument to try and defend that was, no, I was just abbreviating it, not, not getting it.
Abbreviate K to P. How does that work?
Oh man, and P is phosphorus. Like if you're reading P, you'd be thinking of phosphorus, and it's just
it's mind-boggling, right? How do these people get through school? He in the book he wrote a book called The Origins of Kinds, and it's supposed to be, of course, like Origins of Species, but for biblical kinds. And Jade had bought a copy, and it was the most bastardized piece of crap I've ever seen people read.
Yeah, I love Jade. I love Jade's don't care. Like when she's reading through that.
Yeah, but one of the things he definitely got wrong is he put for potassium P instead of K.
No, it was an entire list of abbreviations. Like here's the funny thing. He actually put the correct periodic table symbol. And then others he abbreviated. And in that same list. And it wasn't just one, line. It was like 5 different lines
nobody proofread this thing. It was horrible. But then when we called him out on it on Facebook, people were like, "Oh yeah, he'll explain it. He'll join."
He just keeps running, that guy. Like you know the discussions with me on Facebook, with Anthony.
Right there with you. And you know what he kept defaulting back to? Well, if you don't have the Christian belief, then you have no knowledge to even justify what your knowledge is. So therefore, you can't determine what's science and not science. It's like, go fuck off. Seriously, at that point of sophistry, I'm done.
I'm gonna kill myself.
Yeah, I hate that degree of sophistry. I like a little bit. Don't get me wrong. I think we all do to a degree. It's an art form, but that's just absurd. Because he knows.
Yeah, at that point, you actually just want to slap the guy. Like right? It's just so frustrating.
He knows the science is BS. Now, I'd like to get Jason Lyle, but I'd like to get him on my platform, not theirs.
King Crocodile debating Jason Lyle would be very interesting.
That would be awesome. Maybe keep me posted on that. Maybe we might be able to work something out, though.
Yeah, I'll keep in touch with the. I think John Wilkinson, I think, is the guy.
Yeah, John.
Was it some guy named Cody or something? They were organizing it. And,
they haven't mentioned anything to me yet.
I mean, that's the thing. If I'm invited on, and then what I'll do is, I'll be like the mediator. I'll be like, okay, if I'm coming on, can I bring in a guest or maybe 2 guests? And obviously, you'll be one, and then King Crocodile will be the other.
I'm not in a position to go against Jason Lyle. I don't know.
Of course you are.
No, I'm not. Dude, I don't know asynchronous light.
Yeah, you are.
His model.
Dude, you would debunk Jason Lyle easy.
I never read up on asynchronous light theory. All I know is that
that is literally just a modification of. That's just a modification of Humphrey's model and Hartnett's model. It's like just another version of that. That's all it is. It's nothing fancy.
Right, but the problem is how does that asynchronous light model actually work? By what mechanism does time work in one way and it works differently in the other way?
Yeah. He doesn't explain it. There's no, and he keeps saying, "Oh, I'm going to publish a paper. I'll publish in like 5 years or 6 years since his announcement."
Well, Humphreys doesn't explain a lot of things either. How did Humphreys, for example, get to the 30 micron sphere ratio for the zircon?
I don't know.
He never explains that.
I know.
You look at the formula. The formula for a 2-to-1 ratio doesn't boil down to 30 microns. It boils down to 20 microns. So obviously you're going to have different surface areas, so your helium diffusion rates are going to be different. He doesn't explain why. He also doesn't explain how you actually account for the heat that's going to be generated either. He never bothers with that.
This is just really, really. I mean, if these guys were, if we had to rely on human survival, or to go to the other extreme, go to the moon, everything would fail. No young creationist model or thinking would ever sustain advanced civilization the way, ironically, the secular world has sustained itself.
Well, I definitely agree with that. But yeah, I really want to dive into this this helium fusion argument because again, it's like the polonium halo argument, right? Not a lot of people know about it.
It's actually very similar. You can actually ask him questions on that because I've seen him interact with the polonium halo.
Who?
You know, the Gentry stuff.
Who?
The guy that you're going to bring on with the helium.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, but I want to keep it on the helium. I've already done the polonium halo.
Yeah.
The helium diffusion rates is just I want something that people can go to because again, going to read Talk Origin, it's very difficult to read those papers, right? I mean, let's be realistic. If you don't know anything about this topic and you try reading stuff on polonium halos,
at best you just need a working knowledge of differential equations and maybe, well, obviously thermodynamics, but that's really it.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's extremely complicated, but like for example, when I read Tompkins' paper, I don't have a genetics background, so I can't read John Tompkins' papers very well. I have to have people that read it, and then I read what they write about it. Then I go back and kind of, look at it, right? Because I can't tell if Tompkins' writing bullshit or not. I can only look at his data and go, okay, well, this doesn't seem to say what he says it is. But I can read the polonium halos and understand what the hell they're trying to say.
But if there's any like journal articles that in the meantime, so before the interview, that you'd like me to search in my library, I'll just ask me and I'll go search it.
Yeah. People are asking what the argument is. Basically, the helium diffusion rate argument is saying that these zircons, Oak Ridge or Livermore Laboratories had started doing some drilling. They were looking for a geothermal process to be sustainable forms of energy, and they drilled up zircons, and they found that these zircons at different levels had some helium that was still being diffused through the crystal matrix. And the argument goes basically is that the only way that would be possible is that the Earth was formed sometime around 6,000 years ago. But if you look at the modeling that the rates used to make those determinations, they got everything wrong. I mean, it was just backwards, weird. They start with the premise that the Earth is obviously 6,000 years, right? That's their model. The Earth is 6,000 years. Everything must conform to that, bar none. Right? That's their non-negotiable starting point.
I mean, they're extending it out to Earth's helium reservoirs. So if helium is such a slippery molecule, it will. The Earth shouldn't be 4.5 billion years old. It should be less than 6,000 years old. That's the argument because it's still helium.
1.5 million is what it should have came out to, and it does after you factor all these other things in. If you look at the correction factors, it gets it like pretty on target.
Right. Steve, I actually just realized that part of my answers to younger creationist arguments, that series I made, I actually have a 5-minute clip that I made on exactly this. So maybe if you, in your own time, you want to check it out.
Yeah, definitely.
Interestingly, Jason Lyle's in this clip, and guess who's answering Jason Lyle in this clip?
You,
Hugh Ross.
Hugh Ross.
So I totally forgot about this, but yeah, I'll send you the video link.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I told him though I wouldn't mind having another hangout like with the more technical stuff. Like part of that paper mentions something called the Dirichlet boundary conditions. Do you remember reading about that?
No.
I would be fascinated to have a discussion on that because I know what boundary conditions are and I know boundary conditions, but that's more physics than most people would ever really get. That's like really advanced stuff for no slip conditions. But I was interested in that because obviously I had to learn that crap in nuke school. We didn't call it that, but we understood the concepts. So I would be fascinated to have that kind of in-depth technical stuff on the helium diffusion rates, but I don't think the audience would be really caring to go that detailed. So I told them, don't worry about that kind of technical stuff. Let's just kind of skip that. So
right.
Maybe
I just sent you the link in the Hangouts. Right.
Let's see here.
Wow, this is pretty neat. That's the thing. I made this video like over a year ago, and it just slipped my mind.
Answers to younger creationist arguments. Earth's healing reserves.
Yeah.
Give me thumbs up.
So that because Jason Lyle actually makes exactly that same argument that Humphrey makes. In fact, I start the video by having a younger creationist pastor make the argument. Then Jason Lyle makes the argument, and Hugh Ross, in the presence of Jason Lyle, responds brilliantly on.
Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. See, the reason though, I think they use these arguments like polonium halos and helium diffusion rates is because the average person is not going to understand them right off the bat. And to the creationist who wants verification that the Earth is 6,000 years old, they want to believe this. They're going to take it hook, line, and sinker. Because one, they're not going to have the ability to go validate the stuff on their own. They don't have the technical background to do it. And two, they want to believe this. They start with the premise that it's true, right? So this is confirmation for them. This is not stuff to generally convince the non-believer, right? Because most non-believers are going to say, well, either A, I don't know whether what they're saying is true or not, or B, I'm at least try to look into it to see what they're saying and then see if it's true or not. So all this stuff they put out there is only to the younger creationist who already believes. I'm convinced of that.
Right. And obviously biases and self-confirmation bias.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, when you use a model that assumes a constant temperature over millions of years, that's what uniformitarianism means. That's pretty confirmation bias to change stuff to that degree. To say, well, it has to conform to a young Earth, so therefore I'll make it this.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't get over that. I really can't. I had to read that like 6 times ago. No, they didn't. No.
This is deliberately causing false witness. Like they're deliberately breaking.
Tell me a guy with a PhD is not going to know that's complete bullshit. I just can't believe that they really did that, and yet either two things are happening. They just somehow made it through school without actually understanding these concepts, which I can't fathom, or two, they're just
really
dishonest.
You need a ghost to understand?
What's that?
You said phantom.
I can't fathom.
Yeah, you can't phantom.
Yeah, phantom. I can't believe.
It's fathom.
Fathom. Yeah, whatever. I'm English here. I can't fathom.
I mean, the preacher at my mom's church tried to say that if the Earth was as old as scientists claim it is, that the sun would have overcome it by now because it grows by 5 feet a day.
And where did she get this miraculous?
I don't know where he got these numbers from, but I did the math, and the sun would not have even come a quarter of the distance to the Earth if, considering that it is growing by that speed, and it was the same size millions of years ago as it is today.
I remember back in the 80s, there was people were like, "Oh, well, if the Earth was 10 meters closer to the sun, it would burn up." I'm like, oh,
no,
God,
there could be several thousand meters easily.
Try several thousand miles.
Yeah, quite often it does get closer to the sun.
Yeah, I don't know how people. When is your mom coming on, by the way?
You didn't see that? I asked her one day, when are you going to talk to Steve? And she tried to change the subject. I'm like, tell me, am I just going to have to tell Steve to cancel the idea? And she said, just go tell Steve to cancel it.
Wow.
But by the way, Steve, just check your Facebook private message. I sent you a file.
Yeah, I sent you a message in that Google Plus thing, Steve.
Yeah, vaguely. Yeah, no, I know Ocean thinks like shooting fish in a barrel, but I do miss the whole young Earth creationist stuff.
All right, I'm gonna head off.
Have you seen Logic's latest video?
Steve.
No.
Yeah, he picked some real low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, I don't. Well, he likes low-hanging fruit. Jen, all right, so I'll get with you later on. Like I said, let's have.
Yeah, no worries.
Take your time to review that stuff, but I help me summarize it. Basically, we'll just put the 5 major points and what they are and why they're rebuttals and simplify it for the people. Okay.
Steve, just check out the 1-page summary that Ross gives. I've sent you the PDF.
And then we'll have Ocean come in if we do the presentation with him. If he can understand it, anybody can.
It's true. Because I hate that whole conversation.
You don't like that physics stuff at all, do you?
It's well, I mean, it's not that I don't get it. A lot of it, it's over my head.
Well, Ocean, to write a Facebook post, a very succinct Facebook post that I love on this topic.
What?
Like a review or something.
A review
Wait,
of what?
huh?
No, because I'm getting at the whole fact that Ocean puts unique Facebook posts that are just brilliant. Like they're short, to the point, and like
I
don't know.
I have a fan in Han Solo when it comes to my Facebook and how I manage it.
So I'm expecting a Facebook post on this specifically.
All right. Let's see here. Cyborg, give us the last word. Make it quick.
James is a true god.